Chris? Michael? Good? All right, we're gonna call this meeting to order at 7:01 PM. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please join me in a moment of silent reflection. Thank you. Sunshine law notice. In accordance with the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act, public meetings may be held in person or by means of communication equipment to include streaming services and other online meeting platforms. This meeting is being held in person and through the Zoom meeting platform being broadcast from Borough Hall, 748 River Road, Fairhaven, New Jersey. Public participation for this regular council meeting of January 27, 2025 is available by calling phone number or through web conference Zoom. Members of the public will be on mute until it is time for questions or comments, which will be announced. At that time, the public has the opportunity to question or comment by phone or through Zoom by the raise hand button and will be called on at the appropriate time. Notice of this meeting was included in the schedule of meetings, which was adopted by resolution number 2025-13 and sent to the Asbury Park Press and the Two River Times on January 7, 2025. Posted on the Borough website, the Bulletin Board and Municipal Building, and has remained continuously posted as required under the statute. With adequate notice having been given, the Borough Clerk is directed to include this statement in the minutes of this meeting. Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Councilmember Paul. Here. Sally. Here. Cody. Yes. Scott.
Yes.
Rivera.
Present.
Olson.
Here.
We have Administrator York. Attorney Sobel, the okay?
Yep.
Chief McGovern, Engineer Cordella, and Parks and Rec Director.
You're acting like you're on a playground,
Listen.
Councilwoman.
These chairs are not.
Right.
We need an upgrade.
Are you advocating for an upgrade in
Yes.
chairs?
Bring up chairs, exactly.
Did you? Yeah. When you weren't looking.
All right, let's get along. We have a public hearing on Jake's Law Playground Funding Grant Application. Do I have a motion to open the public?
Motion to open.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. Is there anyone that would like to discuss this up here before I ask for questions from the public?
I do have a couple questions. Maybe Rich would be, or Rich and PJ perhaps, you guys can guide me. Could you, two main areas I wanted to talk to you about, which have to do with the port in place surface, which I did a little research on. But I understand that it bounces and gives, so there's advantages to the surface. Did you explore alternative surfaces?
You want to do questions now, or you want to do the? Sorry, I was on my laptop when you just.
Oh, the mayor asked the council to offer their questions now.
Now,
Yeah, we're gonna vote on this as part of the consent agenda, so I'd rather go through it at this.
I'll just quickly respond, and you guys can jump in, but per the guidelines of the grant, there were only certain types of services that we could use.
It was two, right? Two different ones, and one was significantly
Yeah,
more
it's
expensive.
There's a tile surfacing, which is similar, but it was significantly more expensive.
I know that there are some,
So-
sorry, go ahead.
I'll just finish up my question on it. So I'm looking for the borough engineer response in particular as the other professional who would help assess these things. So what, I don't know what the tile is. That sounds like it's harder. Is it the similar thing with the provides the bounce? Or is it same material?
the more traditional surfacing is the port in place, that's what you see at many of the parks. Some of the surrounding municipalities and Monmouth County typically use that in their park. We do have that currently at McCarter Park for the 2 to 5. That is important. The cost comparison, as DJ mentioned, the tiles are more expensive. It's not something we typically see in this type of setting. We do see those normally, I would say, more in an urban environment, not in a park that like it may not be the best fit. For a park.
And what's the typical lifespan of the port in place?
So there's different factors that come into play. Obviously, usage, The tree roots do play a role in that as well. From a maintenance standpoint, it's really installed and the play surface and play apparatus is used, and then if there's any issues, you can patch, you can
That's
cut out a portion and patch and pour in a new area, and that's what you normally see at some of these other parks, where there's heavier usage maybe at the bottom of the slide, or, you know,
Yeah.
an area of the park. But the benefits are maintenance, you know, the traditional, that we have with the chips and the mulch, every year we have to, there's an expenditure, it's very costly. As you can see, the stuff goes everywhere. I have little ones, they take it home with, you know, it's in their backpacks and their shoes and everything. And then,
We couldn't do that anyway for the grant.
and we would be right, so that's why we looked at these two different options. DJ can talk, I mean, you have some more pricing, but from what we're,
Well, I have, just on the surface, just a
Yeah.
couple more questions. And then, Gigi, if you want to add anything, of course, I want to hear what you have to say. What is there, so there's mixed stuff on the internet, which is, you know, my go-to if I have the time. And what do we know about some of the health or environmental concerns associated with Port in Place? We satisfied this is safe?
it meets all the requirements.
Mhm.
It's obviously used throughout the country, throughout the county, in
Mhm.
municipalities. I don't have specifics in front of me, but,
But it's the preferred,
it's a preferred proven product.
and it's also, a guided, it's also part of one of the options for when you're doing an inclusive playground. Is it
It is.
recommended?
The requirement is to have that type of service. You
Okay.
can't put back what we have.
Great. Did you want to add anything, DJ? The second question I had is about stormwater management, and if you could take us through exactly what you're addressing with the plan as we've seen it on paper.
So the site itself is somewhat flat, but there is a slight grade. Back in 2013, that's when we created that multi-purpose field. There used to be a baseball, or, you know, an infield there with a backstop. That was removed. We created that multi-purpose space. We extended some of the drainage into the site to pick up some of the runoff. But that scope of that project was limited in nature, so we kind of held to that. And that's when we also put in the walking trail
Mm,
around the park. As part of this, we've been dealing with, I want to say for many, many years. And a lot of it has to do with the wood chips, the runoff through that site, you know. You have an extreme amount of usage with school children, people you know, when you go there now after school, there's a heavy park usage. Obviously, we've added additional play apparatus and things to do there. So with all this extra activity, what's happened is everything's flowing east to west. And it's basically going through, it sheet flows like off the basketball court area,
mm,
and then goes through where the swings are, the tire swing, and the existing play surface. We did a Band-Aid a few years ago, we regraded a few things, we reset the tire swing, we broke grade up just to try to control it. We need to go and get more detailed survey, get some topo, get some elevations. We have an opportunity to tie into the system that's there, which is not that far, it's, you know,
across the park.
right there, there's an existing catch basin. But for purposes of the grant, it's really, we put a placeholder in there, we know the problem exists from a drainage standpoint. We have an opportunity to make that fix now, and obviously we want to, because there's a great investment on putting a playground system. And I haven't designed anything yet, that's
Right.
not part of the grant, it's really just, okay, we know the needs, we know the issues. We can ballpark what it's gonna cost, and let's just put something in there, to include it, because it's, you know, ultimately gonna be packaged as a bid. And then You go from there.
After we find out we get the grant, then we can proceed with design and finalize those technical
But
concerns.
we don't wanna put in too low of a number to
Yeah.
realize, if I put 20 in there and realize it's actually 60, well,
Yeah.
until we design it, then we can actually put real numbers on there.
Thanks, Rich.
Okay.
That's all I needed for now.
Anyone else here before I ask the public?
I'm gonna wait, because I think some of my questions are gonna come from the public, so I'll see what they ask.
Is there anyone in the public that has a public comment on the Jake's Law Playground funding grant application? If you do, please state your name and address for the record, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Sure. You want to stay there?
I want to stay.
You got it.
Susan O'Brien, 875 River Road. I'm curious because, I believe the town has to come up with, additional funds in order to pay for all the equipment that's been selected. Have the recreation people thought about what they can eliminate if they don't have enough funding?
Yeah, we can definitely, you want me to take this or?
I can.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, so if we end up having a shortfall, then we can always go back and we can scale back as we need. But as it stands right now, we wanna go and see how much of the grant we can get, and then go from there.
Yeah, and there, we see no reason that we would not receive the full amount. This is the last year, it's a non-competitive grant.
Right, but I thought the grant doesn't cover all this equipment.
Correct, and then we
So
have,
that's why I was asking,
okay,
which equipment has to be prioritized as far as if you have sufficient money and which ones are you leaving off?
right. Well, we have commitments on the full package, right, Chris?
Correct.
Written commitment?
What's that?
I'm
sorry, I didn't hear you.
That's all right. I can wait till we get to
Okay.
that comment.
Susan, did you hear that or no? The end, that they have full commitments outside on the full package as of now.
Oh, you have funds to cover this?
That was what was stated.
Okay.
Yep. Is there anyone else in the public? Sure.
Bill Perkins, Hansford, Attorney.
No one wants to join us tonight. Okay, all right.
Yeah. Could we explain what the funding sources are? Aside from the $750,000. Where is the remainder of the money coming?
We did do that at a public meeting already, I think, but I don't know. He has his you have the PowerPoint?
Want that one?
Or do you want to just roll through the sources?
We've been through it already, but.
Yeah, do you want to just roll through the sources, DJ?
Yeah. we'll do that. Okay, so internally, we have the community appeals and we have the rec trust. The community appeals and the rec trust, and then we're gonna be working with the PTA and the board of ed as well.
And what are do you have the allocations?
Not on this sheet, well, I have what we have in the community appeals, which is, we have over 21,000, so 21,448.52. And then rec trust, there is 114,160.99. That's what we have available in those two.
Yeah, speaking with Frank Crick, the business administrator, early on about this project, he had said that they would look at between 100 and 150,000 out of their facilities budget. Again, I know they're having several open houses regarding their own shortfalls, but I just want to clarify in case there are any questions about that. That facilities money is money that can only be used for infrastructure, cannot be used for salaries or any other issues that they're running into now. So that money can only be used for that. And considering, they're a primary user of that playground, a majority of that playground is used by Sickles School. It certainly benefits them, to put a tenth of the cost to it, to get a brand new inclusive playground for their recreation and their recess.
And the PTA is also committed about 100K, if not more,
Correct.
towards this as well. So
Correct.
that's the summation of those 4 things: the rec trust, the community appeal, the PTA, and the board of ed.
Right, let's go forward to it.
And then also to add to the if we were to receive the grant, that's 750,000 is the max of the grant as well.
And that covers the total cost of the equipment that you have?
That covers everything.
It covers everything, installation, what we can estimate so far.
Just in follow up to my question, because in the November meeting, there was discussion about using leftover funds from a previous bond issue. So I want to know if that's still the case or not.
Nancy, can
We did have.
That was never mentioned in the last discussion regarding this project. It was always going to be community appeal money for recreation and recreation trust. So I'm not sure where the option of using money from a bond came from, but that is not on the table at all for this project.
Right.
Was there another project that because I kind of think I know where he's talking about. There was some talk about this coming from a project that didn't happen, like there was the bike pathway.
So I think
Project?
we talked about this
Yeah.
a little bit.
But I know
I
people
believe
asked.
that money.
we use that for the basketball courts?
That was the basketball. Oh, that was the
Yeah, so
basketball.
that money
You're right.
was used to fund something else at McCarter
Got
Park.
it, okay.
But it has
That's what it was.
nothing to do with, so the only funding that's coming from the borough for this playground, specific from the borough, are the two accounts that we just mentioned.
Yeah.
There are no funds coming from any other account, trust, grant, nothing, other than the grant we're applying for.
And there's no plan to take out debt for this.
I'm sorry?
There's no plan to take out any debt for this.
No.
Not that I'm aware of, it hasn't been discussed and, so, no.
Now, just for the record too, that basketball court was completed. We had a ribbon cutting ceremony a couple months ago.
Yeah.
And that was from that money that was originally for the bike path.
Is there anyone else in the public with a public comment? Sure.
Mark Rothenberg, 19 Dowdy Lane. So if the perma, what would you call it, perma? Yeah. If that's replacing the chips, which are higher maintenance, could we anticipate lower costs to the borough for maintenance of the park?
I would say that's a true statement. I would think that it really has to do with the resources of sending staff over annually, buying wood chips annually, and placing those wood chips and everything else that goes with it.
So generally just ballpark, are these material numbers or are these rounding numbers?
Are these material numbers meaning?
Is the savings material or is it?
There's no wood chips over there currently, so there's no, but are there wood chips over there now?
Yes.
There are?
Yeah.
So there's annual costs.
Yeah.
to be absorbed,
It's
whether it's through
immaterial though, with the amount of,
material.
No, I'm sorry, I confused you with the word. What I meant was, what are the savings likely to be? Consequential?
I would estimate we spend $1,000 a year. Depends on the severity, but depends on the year.
Couple days in the whole group.
It takes a couple days to replace the wood chips.
To replace the widget? Yeah, that's over $3,500 a year.
Yeah.
Plus the manpower, plus the man.
So you think all things being equal, we should enjoy $3,500
Not
a year? worth
really,
of
because we have 2 other playgrounds in the borough that have wood chips, very good fields. And
No, but I'm only talking about this project that we're talking.
it would be a fraction of the 35, so I would guesstimate $2,000.
Right.
In material, plus.
So we're saving plus or minus a couple $1,000. Yes. And just because I don't know this, the problem with the wood chips, other than the dirt they accumulate. They get wood chips on.
So we're not saying there's a problem with wood chips.
No.
As part of the grant, in order to get the grant.
Yeah.
We have to make an inclusive area for all. So that's necessary in order to get the grant money. It allows, wheelchairs and.
Part of the requirements.
It's part of the requirements of getting the grant.
Yeah, it's a non-negotiable.
We have nothing against wood chips. Right.
I had been asked a question, and I believe I asked this last time, but it's the same footprint essentially as the large playground now, correct?
Essentially.
Mark, you good? Yeah. Is there anyone else in the public? Sure.
Bonnie Tricivia, 115 Batten. So before this meeting, I went over to McCarter, because I usually walk around McCarter with my dogs. I'm not really paying attention to the playground. So I actually walked around the playground and looked at it very carefully. And I did notice that it looked like there were nice new wood chips there. And looked like a very nice surface, very natural. I like the color, dark blue, dark green, it kind of blends in. So I was picturing this playground with the lime and the purple and the blue.
So I think it was, I asked this at the last meeting, it's just that, I'm sorry if I cut you, but it's just the rendition, we don't have to do those colors, correct?
No,
Yeah.
not at all.
Yeah, we have our
I guess it
choice.
just struck me that, I mean, I can't say that I have had my grandchildren play at this playground. It didn't look broken to me or whatever, it didn't look out of disregard, here it's 20 years old. It just didn't look like the whole thing needed to be replaced. And, of course, when you said it's going to be the footprint, basically, it's there. Being on the shade tree and loving trees, I'm a little worried about all the mature trees, and if it gets expanded, but then all of a sudden, we have to dig out the tree roots, and then, oh shoot, there goes the tree, we killed the tree. So, and I started looking also at this board in place. And there are some studies out there saying that because it's made with recycled car and truck tires, but they have found parts that have lead in them, which is a serious thing to find, and because it's called plum rubber, whatever. And they find this, like the wood chips, breaks off and is in the kids' shoes and clothing, getting their mouths, and so I guess I just would want to make sure that we really knew this was, let's say, this option for our children. And I see this engineered wood fiber is also ADA approved, I think. It's like a finer wood chip. I think it's just the inside of the wood, not the whole thing. I just wondered if we looked at that. It would look nicer and if it's safer and not.
There was
Can
I just-
Really?
Really,
So it's,
Really- I just want to really quickly, I understand, but I was on the call where they outlined all of the details of the grant, and so, as was DJ, the conversation with Green Acres was around the fact that this board in place technology has come a long way since some of the studies that you have read, and that it is environmentally friendly. It's no longer just rubberized tire.
There's no lead threat.
That's what they told us in the call, but it did come up, a couple people were bringing that up.
they used to have that with the turf fields as well, that had the pellets, and now they use a different material that
Right.
doesn't have that same issue. I'm not, I wasn't at that call. I imagine they're not making it mandatory for all these towns if they know of that issue to put this surface down in their parks for their kids.
Bonnie, I just wanted to answer one thing too. You mentioned the condition of the current playground set and however, it does look very well maintained. There are portions of it we had to remove due to safety issues. For example, this year we removed the slide and there's some other portions we removed as well. We have to do an annual safety inspection on that. And also on top of our annual safety inspection, the school also does their safety inspection as well. So at some point, as pieces are starting to fail, it'll get to a point where even though it makes them look good, it's not going to be safe to have children play on it. So we're eventually going to have to replace it regardless, because of the condition it is. And again, it may still look nice, and I applaud people who've taken care of it. But at the same time, there are several pieces that we've had to remove from it because they're no longer safe for children.
And one more note on that, I mean, I love recycling, replacing, you know. The issues, we can't get the new pieces that replace the parts that are
Correct.
broken.
It's obsolete.
If we could, we would likely do exactly what you just said, but like, once the slide went bad, they make you remove it due to these standards, and then we can't, when we go to these companies and say, can you replace the slide itself that was broken, they say, we don't make it anymore. So
They know what they're
it kind of
doing.
forces your hand, like that
Yeah.
I-89 calculator that's been in business for 40 years.
I was also wondering about the fence for I guess it doesn't have to be a fence, it can be hedges or something natural, that's a requirement too. I mean, just walking around that park, the thought of this fence being right in the middle is.
We discussed that a little bit at the last meeting. I think the sentiment, like I said shrubs, but then I was worried about people tripping. And then I think I caught an email yesterday where someone said maybe it's like a wood section, you know, the ones like we have at the natural area, with shrubs. So that it has more of a natural, we're cognizant of
I've
making
been
sure
thinking
that
about it too.
it has a natural look as well.
I think we all feel the same
does it-
way that you feel about making sure that it It has to obviously meet the criteria, but it
It's
has
such
to
a
have to
beautiful
work
park,
in the park.
and the
Yeah.
people, the reason people go there is shady and
Mhm.
old trees. The exact reason why they don't go to the community field playgrounds, it's hot
Mhm.
and awful and ugly, and, sorry. But, I hope we maintain the beauty of McCarter. And I know the Shade Tree Commission is gonna be consulted, I saw that somewhere.
Mhm.
So, I mean, is there gonna be a list, are there any trees planted from down right now? No.
No.
Or damaged?
No.
To the point where,
Will there have to be more digging at all? Like, it's literally like same depth, same footprint essentially.
my last question, I'm sorry, to take time, but I just was curious if the specific needs of our community's children have been quantified, like what exact kind of equipment do we need? Like, is it sensory? Is it wheelchair accessible? I just wondered if that was part of the study to make sure that we address
Yeah.
what we need. I mean, I know you want to look at everyone who
Right.
visits, but.
Right.
Um,
Marilyn Schwartz actually and Sean McNeil weighed in on it from the beginning.
okay.
Yeah, so that's a very good point. And all inclusive isn't just physical disabilities, right?
Right,
It's
right.
all inclusive. So yeah, they very much. Yeah,
They're
and
behind.
we also gave a survey to the community, for example. There is a resident in town who has a 20-year-old autistic son, and she gave us some recommendations for different swings to accommodate her son being a little bit older. So we took that into account.
That was the only exact like disability thing I saw in that whole survey, and I read through it quickly.
Yeah.
Is that the only response you had about a specific?
Oh, I don't know, that was
Like,
just.
I don't know, I'm just curious, and I also drove down to Rumson to Victory Park just to look at their playground too. Because I thought that is such a beautiful playground, and it occurred to me, I know that there was bathroom, a lot of people on that survey wanted bathrooms, I don't know if that's being added, that seems like a big deal, but, Rumson, because of the bathroom that's there and the runoff, they added that rain garden to collect it, which if we're going to do something like that, it's the perfect place to put in a rain garden exhibit for the town to show our commitment to this. All the kids will be playing there, they can all see it. I mean, Victory Park has signs to explain what it is, I mean, it's just such a great opportunity to.
So let's, I'm not disagreeing with you, but let's focus on the grant application and moving forward, and when we get to the design phase of that, I think that's when we can discuss rain garden and ancillary projects. That's okay, right? Thank you. Is there anyone else in the public? Public, sure.
Bill, I have just another comment in terms of the swings, I guess. Technology and swings haven't really changed that much, so I'm just not sure why I understand that the play equipment, creating an accessible playground, is the reason for the safety services. Is the reason for the new play equipment, the AST guidelines call for accessibility, and that's why we need to do that. The swings themselves, I'm not sure why you need to take down the existing structure of the existing swings and put up the exact same thing in its place, I guess is my question. I'm not sure what the current state of the human body. Keeping the existing swings. I could say, if the swing itself.
Well, the swing itself is
why we
likely,
need to replace the
it's
whole-
probably in cement, like into the ground.
The swings, the structure.
The structure, right.
Yes.
You're talking about the
So there's
actual
nothing-
chain
yeah,
with the
there's
rubber
nothing-
swing?
I just looked at it on something yesterday, the structure itself. It's fine. Powder coated, 5-inch steel posts
Right,
holding up the swings on the chain. If we want to replace the swings that are on the chain, we can do that for thousands of dollars, or tens of thousands of dollars to replace the whole swing set.
So you're suggesting that parts of it can stay and parts of it could be.
Well,
I mean, I have
if you want
no
to
idea.
replace it,
Can I just add some-
you need to-
Sure.
Just clarify.
So-
You need to have some accessible apparatus attached to the. I'm not sure why we couldn't adapt it to do that versus spending money to remove the existing and replace the same thing, brand new.
So again, looking at, obviously, what we currently have, we know it's about 20 years old. Some of the issues you run into when you're dealing with new contractors, they don't like to retrofit new on old. And you have to understand, and obviously, you know, I'm sure a large portion of the cost of this project has to do with the insurance that these manufacturers put together on the product. You have to ensure that they're getting sued by children who get injured all the time, you know, and they try to blame the equipment for it. By retrofitting old equipment with new accessible, again, we were leaving the swing set the same and not changing it, not asking them to be involved in it. Yeah, we could leave it the same and not move forward, but by putting new apparatus on there, I'm sure they're not gonna guarantee it, and obviously what comes down to it, if somebody gets injured, well, that's gonna be our fault, because
That's fine.
that's the concern with that
I
would be.
think we should ask, and then if they won't, then fine, and if it's exactly the same thing, I'm not sure that that's money well spent, what I was saying.
Fair point. Fair point.
Anyone else? The public?
I have one more small thing. Someone had asked, and I talked to Chris about this, but can we donate any of the items? And I'm guessing because there was no replacement, any municipality would want it, but just something to consider if it is an option.
I think it's a safety issue though, isn't it?
That's my
It's the
guess.
same
Sort of like
safety issue.
insurance and, yeah,
I think it, you know,
I figured.
Like
Yeah,
you're
I
not
mean,
allowed to rip a label off a mattress.
And if we can't get the parts, they won't be. able
Yeah,
to either.
exactly.
Which is a shame, because it seems like there is a lot of life left in it, but.
Yeah.
Allison, anyone online with a comment?
She looks like Kevin Flanagan.
Kelly? Kelly? You may be muted. No? Anyone else, Allison? Maybe she can work that out for public comment and we'll accept her comment there. Okay, do I have a motion to?
Hold on,
Oh,
we just gotta. I need, probably not analyst. Let's see.
Ooh, panelist.
That's probably not that. Who's it? You're muted.
Hi, Kelly.
She's muted.
You're still on
Kelly,
mute.
you have to unmute.
You're still on mute.
Not a meeting for her. Yeah.
Yeah, we can't hear you, but hi.
There's that.
Do you wanna maybe call into someone on the phone and they can put it on speaker? Someone-
Sure, she called her.
Yeah, Kristen's gonna call you, okay, cause we can't hear you.
Coming in hot, Kelly, coming in hot.
Hi.
No worries, what's going on? You're,
Thank you all. Appreciate you being patient with me. I just have a question and concerns, you know, from the Green Team Environmental Commission too. This has to go in the back of my head a little bit, is that I am thinking about the amount of, you know, we already have the turf field, we already have the basketball court there at McCarter Park. I know the Porton playground is kind of the go-to for Jake's Law, and it, you know, you see it at a lot of different playgrounds. Obviously the concerns about the chemicals and perhaps there is more, I'm sure there is more study on that too, but I know that engineered wood fiber is approved by Jake's Law. I know that it can last longer, 2 to 3 years, and I just wonder, just like the retention with water as well, the more natural look, you know, rather than again, more permanent, another permanent piece of that park there, which, you know, everyone loves, you know, how with the natural setting. So I'm just asking to look at that again. You know, just again, as concerned to kind of not create more
sure,
permanent artificial surfacing.
we will look at it. We'll take a look. I don't think it's gonna stop our grant application based on the look of the dais up here. But, it would definitely be something we would look into before we would go to any design standard. Is that fair?
Yes, that's fair. That's great. I appreciate you, and just with stormwater too, and just retention and everything, and that, that playground gets so much more use than any other playground in the town, and I wonder how much the Porton, I know it's to be more durable and longer, but how long, if you have so much, use of it, is it, how long the upkeep, it's
Sure.
gonna stay.
Sure.
So, thank you, I appreciate it, and again, I apologize for my new phone, I don't have all the accessibility, so,
No worries.
thank you.
Thank
all.
you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I ask you one more thing? So, because again, questions I got, but most likely we're gonna go through with the project, but we don't have to go through with the project once we
Correct.
get the grant.
Right.
Just
Correct.
to put that out there. And then second, I did talk to Chris about this, but this was a state, what do you call it? Like a state contract that we got
Right, the state contract vendor is who put this proposal together.
but there is a chance to go out to bid if we think that there might be a chance for it to be less.
Correct.
But generally, the state contracts tend to be the less.
They're supposed to be, yes, that's what they're designed to be, the cooperative purchasing.
But we will go out to bid. We have to go out to bid. It's not.
You have to go through the state contract.
No,
Not for
not if it's a
sure.
state
Okay,
contract,
I'm
vendor,
sorry.
no.
You could, if you chose to go non-state contractor, you put like bid specs together, and go out to bid. and see
Got
what
it,
you
got it,
get.
got it.
Yeah, but
And
not
even
with
if
the-
we did that, he confirmed that you could still go with the state contract if they don't come back, if we don't like those bids.
I think what I like, what I'm hearing right now is,
Yeah.
the feedback has been really good, because if we do need to make modifications,
Yes.
whether that's design, material, even to adjust the budget, maybe we have to tighten it up a little. Our estimates need, I hope, are generous, so that we have a margin to play with, so, I hope, hopefully we get the 400, 750, and from there we can do great things.
Yeah, we're just trying to get the grant
And,
submitted by February. Yeah.
Yeah.
Allison, anyone else? Public comment? Thank you. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion to close.
Wait, hold up. We didn't get it in. It's like at the buzzer. Bill Perkins at the buzzer.
Community, will the community have an opportunity to see the final design before it
Yeah,
actually
yeah,
goes
we'll
on?
participate.
Especially if it's not going out to bid.
I'm sorry.
Public at large get to see
Yeah.
what the design will be.
Well, I believe at the very least, the design would be shown the night that we would be voting on it, but I get the feeling we're gonna have more, more public input than that.
I agree with the mayor for another participation session.
Motion to close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. Next up, we have the McCarter Pond Subcommittee report. Don? And whoever wants to do it, yeah, come on up.
It's just me for now.
Okay.
Thank you for the opportunity to report back to the governing body and another opportunity to share what we've been up to with the general public. So just a quick context of what tonight's conversation and the report is all about. It's not our final recommendation. It's more of an interim step, kind of a where are we at this point? We've been at it for a few months. And we wanted to report back basically with the draft report, with the opportunity to collect some feedback from you and still gather input from the community. Thank you. So part of this is seeking your input, and so I do hope this is a more of a dialogue, less than me just talking at everybody. But essentially what we're talking about here is the visual of what we see in McCarter Pond, typically in the warmer summer months. At the very, if you want to just go back to the slides here. Yeah, thanks. So top line, McCarter Pond is dying. We are contributing to its demise. We can take action to extend its life. So that's the key issues here. I'll go through a little bit of that in detail.
but that's essentially what's going on. I prepared a bit of a report here that talks about the committee and what we've done, how we formulated, our ideas. Trying to explain the issue in a little bit more detail and some granularity, so everyone can kind of be on the same page as far as what is the root cause we're trying to address. Share what's been done in the past. I feel like this is a great example of where there's a lot of whispers in the corners of the community about what was done. And I thought it was a great opportunity for us to put fact on paper, summarize all the work that's been done over the years.
John, do you mind coming up just so folks on the owl can hear you? Because they're not gonna pick up, and I'm sure people in the public on the phone want to hear it, so
Can't hear
just.
me back there.
Oh, if you're.
That's no, right here, the owl on the center. Yeah, the farther you are from that, they can't hear it,
Okay, got it.
yeah.
And then finally, our recommendation. So thanks, Allison. Just a quick one about the committee. Mayor established it last summer. There was several complaints about the look of the pond. The action was taken to come up with a recommendation for what to do. And our initial look at it was, let's look at this holistically. Let's look at this big picture, not just look at the symptoms of seeing the pond scum and the algae, but really understand what's going on with the pond, and what should we be doing long term. Next one, thanks. I'm not gonna go through all of these things that we've done. It's a great example for you guys to kind of take a look at. But essentially it was a comprehensive review. So some had asked that we go back and we understand the history. We went back about 20 years worth of documentation. Files that provided from engineering, from DPW, from prior borough administrators, to understand, looking at bills, what we paid for, trying to understand what we've done in the past. Public voice, so it was important that we heard from the public. It's obviously a very public space. We have strong ties to the visual aspect of the pond, the recreation that we enjoy with the pond. It was important to get expert guidance. None of us are pond experts, and I don't pretend to be a pond expert tonight. I'm a lot more educated on ponds than I was back in August, but I'm still not an expert. But it was important that we bring in outside expertise to guide us in what we're seeing, and how we formulate that ultimate recommendation. Cool, next one. So, and I know for a lot of you that have been here over the years, much longer than I've been here, a lot of this will be redundant. I'll try to skip through a lot of that as much as I can, but it's here for you just to refer back to. Essentially, we're talking about a pond that was man-made about 100 years ago as part of the McCarter estate. It was originally for aesthetic purposes. It was functionally a ice pond. So it's only about 3.5 feet deep, as we understand it, its origin. It's about 2.5 acres, and it sits within a 43-acre watershed. And if any of the numbers I get wrong, I'm sure Rich will jump in. I think what's important here is a lot of ponds have different origins. Some are streams that are dammed, some are spring fed, some are retention basins for storm runoff. Ours is primarily storm runoff, and it is fed by an underground spring. So you would have noticed this summer, even when we went like all of August into September with no rain, the water level never really dropped. It always sat right there at the drain line. And that's a really good indication that it's, it's naturally getting water fed in. Okay, next slide. This is what I mentioned about the watershed. This becomes important when we talk a little bit more about the root cause of the problems. But what you can imagine 100 years ago, that watershed didn't have a whole lot of houses on it. Probably had no houses on it. They had the McCarter estate and some of their outhouses. In the years since, it now has 40, like I said up there, 43 acres and 70 plus properties. And the streets are indicated there in the bullets. And it has 3 stormwater inlets. So essentially it becomes a major outflow of stormwater coming off of Buttonwood and Dogwood. If you zoom in a little bit closer to the pond, these are the 12 residential properties of butts, the shoreline essentially. What's interesting about this pond is and you guys probably see it, you may not even think about it. The public shoreline, so the borough-owned shoreline is about 300 feet, 15%, 80-20 rule here. The private shoreline, so each individual owner that has their property backing up to the pond, if you add all that together, aggregate all that 1,600 feet together, that's about 80%. So anything we want to do to try to impact the perimeter of the pond really requires us to involve the neighbors that live there. Awesome, thanks.
It's a quick question. Is the portion that the borough owns or is public, is it contiguous or is it interrupted with private properties?
It is not interrupted. Austin, can you zoom out a little bit? There we go. We'll just make it the size of the screen.
Remember that day?
So today, when we look at it, and a lot of this is what got us onto this, this effort of the committee. We see it transitioning, number one, in the southern end of the pond, closest towards the end of where Buttonwood is. We see large algae blooms as, all the way to the northern end, where all the kids are fishing. More recently, we've seen these large storm rain events, and that picture number 3 there in the middle shows the water basically just overflowing that drain area where we've got the picnic tables and a little concrete area, and literally that's the drain that's right under there, being overwhelmed. But when you think about like the issues and what you want to do to a pond, you have to understand, well, what's its purpose? Because some ponds have like a very specific purpose for its municipality. It might be a source of water for the fire. In our case, it's really there for aesthetic purposes. It's there for recreation. It doesn't have much of a function outside of that. It is a large stormwater basin, which is important. Because it ultimately collects the stormwater that then flows out into the Fourth Creek and then into the Navasink River. So it is, it's a connected body of water in that respect. So I'm going to step through a little bit about the details of what's going on here, and I'll quickly move through this where this might be a little bit of extra detail. But like I said at the very beginning, our pond is dying. Actually, all ponds are dying. And that's the nature of the pond. And what we're talking about is succession. So if you kind of look at this graphic here, at the upper left-hand corner, you see a very deep body of water. And as you kind of move through the years, it gets to the bottom right where if untreated over the years, leaves, organic matter, other elements will get into the pond. Aquatic plants will take roots and eventually it will become land again. So this is the life cycle of a pond. You're seeing it happen in real time on the southern end right now where we already have land. You're seeing it at one of the inflow areas coming off of Buttonwood, kind of creating a bit of an island in the middle of the pond. Next slide, Allison. So a little bit more detail, what's contributing to it. So 3 things that we looked at: sedimentation, and that's really the sand, rock, dirt, grit, stuff that comes in off the storm draining, some that comes in off the banks of the pond. That's what's accumulating and actually creating the bottom of the pond to raise and lower the depth of the water. Plant growth is the next step. So as that pond becomes more shallow, more sunlight can hit the bottom of the pond. It creates a more favorable environment for growing conditions for those plants to grow and flourish. And then eventually it'll transition over to a wetland. Because you imagine as those plants grow up, they capture more debris, they capture more sediment, and it continues to kind of like accelerate.
Hey, Sean, when the lake is completely filled in, is it a wetland at that point? Like, I'm trying to understand, so like sedimentation, plant growth, wetland, and then corresponding young, middle age, old, dead. So all ponds are moving throughout this life cycle. So is the wetland transition the final piece before it's quote unquote dead? Or because there's an underground spring and all of that, it would convert, McCarter Pond being dead, quote unquote, would be a wetland.
I don't know what the end game is.
Okay,
This like kind of scientific look at it. It's not a wetland when it's done, it dries up. Now, in our case specifically, in 10, 20, 30, 50 years, whatever, if it was untouched, would it continue to have some sort of more consistency in some parts? Potentially.
thanks. Yeah, I agree.
So like I said, you're contributing to it, and so let's talk a little bit about what we're doing. So organics, we'll talk about three items here. So organics, that's what falls in, like, imagine you see all those beautiful trees on Button. Those leaves end up in your yard, they end up on the street, they also end up in the pond. Sediment, we talked about that. Anything that flows in off the street, you can imagine any of the houses that have been worked on in that watershed in the past 20 years. If there wasn't a great sediment fence and, they stripped the lawn and it was all dirt, and it was a big rain event. Every time there's a big rain event, dirt washes into the ground and into the street. For years, we put our leaf and brush in the street.
Yeah.
People take a lot of plants out of the ground with big root balls and put it in the street to be taken away by DPW. All that contributes. Now, maybe you didn't do it as a resident, but doesn't mean others didn't. So that's what we talk about, sediment getting into there. And then excessive nutrients. So there will be nutrification in the pond naturally. When the leaves fall and they decompose and decay, that provides food and nutrients for the plant life, for the fish, the turtles. That's fine, all good. It happens naturally. Excessive nutrients is when our lawn fertilizer, the fertilizers we put in our gardens, applied correctly or incorrectly, it can end up into our storm drains, flows off of our lawn, and eventually can make it into the pond. So it's like, throwing, lighter fluid on the fire, right? The fire's already burning, and you just, doused it with lighter fluid. So that's kind of like big picture, what happens in the pond, the life cycle of a pond, a little bit what's more unique about McCarter. So like I mentioned, there's a lot of mature trees surrounding the pond. We love that. So that's not going away. That's just a part of a fact of life. If you look at the pond in the middle of the natural area, right? It's surrounded by trees. It's not surrounded by houses. It gets a lot of leaf litter into there. Like that's just part of its life. We understand that. Sedimentation, so kind of going back to the three items from the previous slide, it was relatively shallow from the start. And so that provides a bit of a complication in that the margin for error as that sediment and the organics accumulate, it goes from 3 feet to 2 feet to 18 inches. Also, 18 inches of water isn't really a whole lot of water. We don't have any stormwater control at the moment, so those three inflows, it's just a pipe. Right, anything that's in the street goes right in. There's no netting, there's no nothing, there's nothing to capture. Because it's a great place to play and to have fun, the banks, and especially the public side, along Fairhaven Road, they're highly trafficked. And again, that's a part of life, like that's not, I don't anticipate that going away. We're not saying keep this as a pond that we only look at and not use. But it's a fact of life, so how do we accommodate for that? We look around the perimeter of the pond, like I said, 85% is our residents that are responsible for that. And some of those bulkheads are failing. And so when those bulkheads are failing, literally the soil that those bulkheads are holding back is spilling into the pond. And rain events continue to exacerbate that. They go through the bulkhead, can push that sediment and that rock and dirt out into the I talked a little bit about the nutrients coming from our own lawns. The geese population, in fact, contributes quite a bit. And that was a learning for us on the committee. I don't want to quote the number unless someone knew it off the top of their head, but maybe someone on the phone does. But for every so many geese, it's like the equivalent of like a full septic system. Yeah, it's pretty gnarly. So while it's pretty to have the ducks and the geese there, and I guess the ducks aren't as bad as the geese, is what I learned. It's a problem. concern about. Let's pause there. I'm gonna get into a little bit of the background. Can you go back one more, Allison? Is that? Yeah, okay, cool. So we talked a little bit about the issue. Let's talk a little bit about what we've done over the years. Go to forward, Allison. Great. So what we tried to do as a committee is go through the material that was provided and try to put it into summarize, like what have we done over the years? And really, I don't want to say this is, you know, this is 100% done. And in fact, it hasn't been fact checked, if you will, by our DPW experts and Rick specifically, but it is a starting point. And so if we go back about 20 years, we had approval to do a full restoration project. Now, a restoration project is literally trying to go back to day zero. And so if you remember that 4-picture graphic of, you know, of day one of the pond where it's deep and there's no sediment, there's no accumulation of organics, you know, that's what a restoration project does. It dredges and it pulls out that material. That project never came to fruition, and it kind of looked like for a few years, not a whole lot was done until we started getting into kind of like the mid 2010s. We started going out to bid and getting some input on what we could do. We put in the aeration. Is that like yeah, so aeration is important because we're adding oxygen into the water. Number one, it helps the fish, helps the aquatic life that's in there. It's also good for helping balance within the pond. We started doing chemical treatments kind of around 2014. Chemical treatments aren't, I'll just make it sound bad, but they could be algicides, they could be herbicides that are done specifically to treat certain types of aquatic plant life, certain types of algae that's in the pond. There are dyes that can be used to help diffuse the light, so not as much sunlight is getting to the bottom of our very shallow pond. There are specific pellets that are beneficial bacteria. That's kind of considered a chemical, but you drop that in and it literally tries to eat the muck that's at the bottom of the pond. In that same time frame, we kind of re-looked at the pond. We had a survey done. We looked at a proposal from an engineering standpoint of what it would take to get a dredging permit, not actually do the dredging, but just to go get a permit. In 2017, there was that environmental assessment completed. You can zoom out a little bit. Now, and then what's probably in everyone's recent memory, recent history is the hydro raking. So I'll go in a little bit more detail on the hydro raking, but that came after years of these surveys, these assessments that were completed. They're all recommended taking organic material out of the pond to help reduce that organic load, to try to bring it back into balance.
I'm not going to elaborate much on my comment, but I wouldn't call 2023 April hydro raking phase 1. I would actually call the November hydro raking phase 1. We really only did one phase. I'll talk offline too about that.
You can skip, you can quickly jump through the next slide is really for you guys to look at in more detail and provide you some deep definitions of like what those different treatments are. I'm not going to go into that tonight. The ecological survey that was done in 2016. Again, it's just a summary for you to see what those results are. The full report is available if you want to look through it. But again, here's the recommendations. The recommendations are not dissimilar to what other contractors, other experts over the years have recommended. The aeration, which was done, the blue dye, which I mentioned, the MD pellets, hydro raking. Looking at where the inflow into the pond and how we handle storm water. So I'll do a quick, my point of view on what I learned about hydro raking, and I'll let you guys, verify. But essentially, it was a vendor that was chosen in early 2023. There's no proof that the material was removed. And you guys are in a dispute and we moved on. AquaClear came in later that year. They were contracted for about 10 days to do work. And I put up here what they did. And so this is based on DPW's assessment of and confirmation of what was done. So 250 tons or 22 20-yard dumpsters. So 20-yard dumpster, I don't, everyone's maybe more familiar with what that is than I am. It's essentially a dump truck. So if you look like a double axle rear wheel dump truck, it, would be very out of place on Fairhaven Road, it'd be very big. Imagine 22 of those filled with stuff, like,
Organics.
yeah, brown, dark, icky, wet, spongy stuff came out. That's great. But I think what was important for us to clarify is a lot of residents think that the pond was hydro-raked, which is true. Now, we've been like talking about analogies. It's like if I hired someone to come mow my lawn, and I said, mow my lawn for an hour. They're gonna mow my lawn for an hour. It may or may not mow my lawn completely versus if I said, come mow my lawn. And however long it takes, you're gonna be there until the lawn is mowed, right? We contracted for 10 days. Was that enough time to get everything out of the full 2.5 acres or 2 acres or whatever they could actually get to? No. But was it enough to create a channel, maybe 20 yards, 100 yards wide? Yeah, I mean, certainly stuff was removed, but it was not the hydro raking of the pond, cool, we're done, we're good for 10 years.
Could you double click on that real quick? So I'll hit, so there was certain practicalities though, right? So there's pieces of McCarter Pond where you can't hydro rake anymore.
I'm not judging.
No, it's not judging, but I just want to make sure that the facts are articulated, right? So there were certain like wetland areas that you can touch, and then I don't know if it was on the Jarian,
No.
What are you getting at? The
I
engineer?
want to tread very carefully here. The reason that we chose 10 days was to be underneath the bid threshold to ensure that we had a vendor that we knew could do the job. And let's just leave it, that part of the conversation.
and they strategically did where they did because of the way the water
Well,
flowed.
yeah, I don't know about that.
Can I clarify that? And I know I've asked this question, but I'm not sure I'm fully clear. So how much of the pond do we think essentially was hydro raked and how much would be left, or would we have to fully do that piece plus the other piece?
So that part, I can just answer from the end where the kids go fishing. To right around where you start seeing that island now in the middle. That's pretty much what they had done. I think the reason I just answered Drew like that is my opinion was we should have started the hydro raking closer to the area that was already being
Prior to
converted,
transition.
because that area is more prone to continue that conversion quicker. So I think that fundamentally, I don't mind saying it, that was a strategic mistake, but either way, we are where we are, and we gotta decide what to go forward is from here.
But there was still like half that wasn't done essentially.
Well, let me put some numbers to it. So 1 foot acre. So 1 acre of land space, so like think of this table, right? McCarter Pond is 2.5 acres, so like half the table is an acre. 1 foot, so I wrote this down, 1 acre at 1 foot depth is 1 foot acre. That's 43,000 cubic feet. Or 1,600 cubic yards of stuff.
How many dump trucks?
I'll get to that, all right? That's 1,600 cubic yards, so hang with me, all right? So we did 22 20-yard dumpsters, that's 450 cubic yards. So that's a quarter of 1 table.
About an 8.
Right, so we did this, the pond is this.
Mm-hmm.
So
more than, or less than an acre.
So to do this,
Significantly.
It's only
To do-
12%.
half the table, do
Yeah.
like one of the tables is 1,600 cubic yards. And if a dump, and you can do the math, if the dump truck is 20 cubic yards,
Mhm.
it's 800 trucks,
Just for 1 acre.
for 1 foot acre.
So if it's 2.4 acres. Yeah, 2.5 times that, right?
About 2,000.
2,000 trucks.
So just real quick, Mark, I just want to let you know, I'm not ignoring you, but just save it for public comment, whatever question you may have.
So just to put it into, like, because I know that question keeps coming up, and I think it was
Yeah.
important for us to put that into context, so what. Not saying that that's a good or bad thing, or like I said, there's
No, but
no,
it's good to know what we did.
Yeah.
yeah,
We had to.
Size of the problem.
Yeah.
You just
Not-
work
it's not
backwards
bad.
from the amount that was those dump trucks and to get that number, is that how you figured that out?
figured one out.
The 1 foot acre. No, well,
So an
Did you
acre
ass-
is 43,000 square feet,
right,
so a foot of
Right.
material is 43,000 cubic feet.
I guess I wanted to know how you got the information. Did you work it from the calculation? Did the calculation, was it based on the dumpster trucks that were loads that were removed? And then you just worked backwards to figure out what portion of the pond that represents?
DI 89 calculator.
Yeah,
I don't know what portion was done, I
Or
can
did you
just tell
have
you,
data
I can just tell
from-
you like,
The
A
assumption
percentage.
based on a foot. And
Essentially.
comparison of portion of material that was actually removed.
that's
But
all
you
that,
removed
that's what I
4
wanted
inches.
to know.
yeah, I mean, if you
'Cause it's-
remove 4 inches or
Mhm.
6 inches,
Right.
obviously you could get more surface done.
But just for clarification. I understand
Mark.
that we've quantified the
Mark.
amount of stuff
Mark.
we removed,
Mark,
and,
this isn't, so
but
right
it's
now,
pertinent to the moment.
but
I think
we're
we
not,
have to clarify.
we're currently not in a public hearing, so you have to hold your comments until public comment, I'm sorry. Continue.
So that's that. Next slide. So when we started, so this section, our recommendation, so before we get to how do we come about a recommendation? We wanted to set expectations. So it was important for us as a committee to set our own expectations. Like, there are beautiful lakes and ponds up in the mountains that are crystal clear and you can see the stones at the bottom. Like, that's not this. Okay? Obviously, we are a small municipality with a certain budget and a lot of competing priorities, so it wasn't so much as like, let's find the cheapest, but let's look at cost versus value. Right, if we're gonna have this, if I have so many dollars and I'm gonna put it to one thing, how do I get the best return for that investment? It was really important that we get to the root cause. And again, it's like your house, maybe have a leak in a leaky roof. And, you start to see a brown spot in the ceiling. One year you paint it, one year you cut it out and you replace the drywall, but you never fix the leak, right? You're always gonna have a leaky roof. And so for us, it was trying to understand, well, how do we fix the leaky roof? And then maybe we won't have the algae, maybe we won't have that big blooms in the summer, once we've addressed the root cause. Not selling for the first answer. So this was something that kind of came up over and over again. It's like, you sit down with an expert, someone who does this for a living, and they kind of give you the easiest answer right away. And, conversation done. We found that we had to kind of push and take what someone else had told us and ask them a more deliberate question to get a different answer. And to really push them to say, no, look at our topography, look at our neighborhood, look at like the reality of what our shoreline is, and then come back with a recommendation. And then I mentioned it earlier, but involving residents. So we had 2 public sessions, one here, one at the pond, hosted by the neighbors on the pond. And that was important. And that's not to say that we're done involving residents, but it was important to get their expectations as well early on. Okay, so some organic principles. Next slide, please. Just a quick summary of who we consulted. Like I said, it was important that we reach outside. Obviously, Rich, Nick, Chris was instrumental. I really want to thank Chris for his efforts being a pseudo committee member as well as many other things. But he was really helpful in getting a lot of these meetings lined up for us. On the right-hand side is really the external experts that we reached out to and spoke with. So many of them are founders and owners of their own solutions and companies and have been doing it for decades. And some were professionals we found. So people in the committee took it upon themselves to reach out, do some research, and bring in some alternative solutions and service providers to get some alternative ideas. Next. So like I said, we didn't kind of just focus on one thing. We looked at it holistically, and if I tried to put it on one page, this is kind of the best I could do. And you'll notice, especially if you have the history behind the pond, none of this is new. Right? This is all very redundant with what others have told us. But I think it's more of a puzzle. Like, how do we put those pieces together? It's less the what and it's more the how. That's where we're at this point, is how do we piece these pieces together to come up with a solution that's going to work for us. Slide. We do still have some open questions. The kind of the key one that we addressed early on, like kind of head on, was dredging. Now dredging has this, it's more involved, it's more costly of the options that we considered. There's a recent example in Rumson where they were able to dredge the pond behind Forestdale. So the big difference here is dredging, and it's like you noticed before the river froze over, they've been dredging the Godey Channel and the Navasink River. And that's like going and reestablishing depth. They're removing rock, they're removing sand, they're removing sediment. We actually don't really need to do that. We need to remove organics. And so no one that we talked to really recommended this as our path forward. I would say the only area that came up, and that's in the second column here, is what do we do with the emerging wetlands? Now, it's not a wetland because no one's told us it's a wetland. It's not officially a wetland until it's officially a wetland. So we can call it whatever we want for now. We can call it an island, a wetland, whatever. But that's the only area we've talked about, is it make sense? Is that cost versus value in chipping away at some of that is already growing?
Real quick question on that. So you said McCarter Pond's 2.4 acres, right? How many acres would be island? Is it a percentage of the original 2.4? Like,
It is a percentage.
do you have like a rough, did the committee have a rough estimate?
No, have you guys put it together? No, we didn't put a number to it.
Okay,
We could ask, there's still a couple of vendors we're gonna meet with at the pond, and I'm sure they'd be happy to just do a drawing on it.
but the 2.4 includes that, right?
Yeah,
So the puzzle pieces that we're putting together could potentially be to an area that's less than 2.4, depending on what we assess with the emerging
that's how
islands.
I would assume. You're talking about something that's less than 2.5.
Checks. Okay, cool.
Thanks, Allison. So where do we go from here? So really, we kind of try to break it down into what's our objectives? What do we want to try to address here? So number one is interrupt. We want to go back to that picture of the life cycle of a pond. We want to interrupt that aquatic succession, stop it from accelerating towards that bottom right picture of filling in by reducing the nutrient load and increasing the depth, the relative depth. Number two, fix. So fix our problems. We have some problems to fix, but essentially what's contributing to the sedimentation and the additional nutrients coming into the pond. And then we need a maintenance plan. So go back a few years where we were treating it chemically, that was the start, but that didn't even fulfill what a typical municipal pond management plan would entail. If there are 6 steps, we had done like 2 or 3. So I still think there's an opportunity to improve upon that aspect. I'm gonna make this up. Can you make this a whole slide? So in those three areas, interrupt, fix, maintain. And I did this on purpose, so as you guys are looking at it, you know, you can think what's operational, what's capital, what's something that's a one-time project versus what's ongoing. The top of there, you see Borough is in the blue and residents are in the green. And that's another important
Yeah.
distinction here is, it's not all on you, it's not all on us. It's very much a handshake. If you guys are gonna put something in, I think it's all very reasonable that the residents have to put something in and vice versa. You know, if the residents decide, hey, we're gonna do this, I think it means you guys have gotta come to the table and meet them and say, this is what we can offer, this is what we can do. We are, you know, this is the sort of the shell of what we're recommending. You can see hydro raking is part of that interrupt. So get that organic load out of there and continue to do it. For the residents that live in the watershed, we'd really like to see a movement towards on-site, like on your property, stormwater capture, for those that aren't already doing it. You know, if they are, that's great, awesome, keep it up. But if you're not, that's an area where we think that's an interrupter. You know, that will change how water flows in the watershed and have an important impact. Fixing, so you know, some of the things that are broken. And we're already taking some action here in this fiscal year. So stormwater treatment devices are underway for the Buttonwood side at the very least, to get something started that's not too intrusive. DPW's agreed to jump on that. That public shoreline, the third bullet here, a fishing pier or boardwalk. Again, it's, if you go around and you look at other bodies of water, even in the natural area, you'll notice there's that little deck you can go step on and, you know, throw a rock or throw a fishing line or whatever you do off of it. But that would be an important element of keeping the public shoreline, you know, enhanced and part of the pond ecosystem.
Sean, can you just, so what is it, since they're not stepping close to the riverside, the sediment's not going in?
Mhm.
Got it, okay, thank you.
Yeah, think about like an elevated boardwalk or pier.
Right.
On the resident side here, so those 12 residents that butt up against the pond, we'd really like to see a planting buffer. Now, recommendations are 10 feet. There's a lot of lots that have a very narrow or shallow backyard. And so, you know, that's an activity that we're doing in parallel, where we've got the Friends of McCarter Pond, working on some material, going door to door in a manner of talking to residents and trying to educate them on what's going on, and trying to understand voluntarily, what are people willing to do? Part of the maintaining down here, you see hydro rate comes back. So we talked about hydro raking, could it be, we talked about from bid thresholds in a certain number of days, we talked about it from cubic yards. It might be impossible to do it all at once. It might be possible. That's where we need a little bit of input, but at some point, you're gonna get to a point where you pulled out as much organic debris as you really can. And then you move into the treatment, the aeration, which you've got going on, you've got the chemicals, the bacteria. Bacteria will continue to dissolve and treat the remaining organics that are in the pond, and they will work as leaf litter falls in and decays. It will work as long as those beneficial bacteria are in there. It will work to eat at that. Watershed residents, so anyone that's kind of living in there, we'd be looking at helping them to understand fertilizer usage and how to reduce it. We're not saying don't use it, that's certainly an option, but I think what's a better first approach is, you know, how can we use less? Let's start there. And then responsible lawn maintenance. I mean, even in, someone mentioned about walking their dog. You know, I walk up and down Buttonwood in the fall, and several times you see landscapers blowing the leaves, you know, into the pond. You know, so simple things like that. If we can help people understand, those are things we don't want you to do. These are things we do want you to do. Help prolong the life of the pond. That's what we mean by responsible lawn maintenance. pause there. This for this, any questions about what's up there?
Great.
Thank you, John.
Can I ask you one thing? Are you ready for
Yeah,
questions?
Borough.
Is that okay?
Okay, so I think
Slide bus.
two more, and then
Slide.
I'll open it up. So, if you just, zoom out a little bit, Allison, for us. So there's a little bit more of work to be done here. How do we, like, cool, we have a lot of ideas. We've known this for years. What are the things we can do for the pond? Comes back to how do we get it done? So we spent more time looking at grants, because there are some out there that are applicable. Their cycles are known, so what we can start to do is say, hey, in fiscal year, 2026, this is the grant we want, this is the type of project we want to do. That's the kind of information we'd like to be able to go back to you guys. Obviously understanding that, the borough budget is a portion, but not knowing how much of the portion it would really be, this is what we would recommend and how elastic that recommendation can be. Can you do it in year one, or can you, if you delay year 1 to year 3, are there any impacts to what we would recommend? And then the next slide, I believe, is really just the last thing, next steps. So like I said, discussing the actions, so if you go back to that previous slide, discussing the actions with the residents, what we'll be asking them to do. So what's on the right there with the residents? Using our committee members to do that.
Sean, for general feedback, how do you, what's your preference as far as like getting feedback? Do you want us to send like an email to you? Do you want like?
We're gonna talk right here, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we could spend 3 hours talking about this, so but just like, yes, we'll talk now, but what is your preference? Like how, I'll ask my question this way. How can we support you as you work towards finalizing the committee's recommendation?
Yeah, so I'm hoping for a little bit of dialogue tonight. If you've seen the material, you've had a chance to digest it, you've heard my voiceover in the next week or so, you can take some time and have some notes back, questions, comments, things you think we need to go deeper on, we've missed, all very helpful. We will be working towards finalizing and wrapping up what our recommendation is. Really what we're looking at next is, like I said, the funding sources, sequence and timing. So if we were going to do A, B, and C, does it have to be A, B, and C, or can it be B, A? Is there any flexibility? Then we're talking with Chris already about bidding and contracting. So how do we get to a point where, in unknowns, we have better insight into what those unknowns are. Those unknowns could be the depth, the quality of the material that's in the bottom of the pond, things like that, so that we are more informed when we go out to bid.
Sean, thank you so much. You and the entire committee, very much appreciate all the work that you all put into this. My only thing is something you were saying at the very end, and I'm just throwing this out to the rest of the council members. I'm assuming the pond itself is borough property. You're making mention of people blowing leaves into the pond. I think that part's an easy fix. We should set an ordinance that says that you can't rake or blow leaves into the pond. I don't see any benefit whatsoever. We have a service that picks up leaves. It's, the schedule is set, and I don't see how that's, if it was their pond, it's a different story. It's all of our ponds. It's the public's pond, and it's obviously contributing to the issue that we have here. So, I don't know how you all feel about that. Are you okay with me putting the wheels in motion to just
Small signage.
check the
fine.
mark?
I mean,
Something like that?
I am, except it's only 12 households. Before we did that, would it be better if we just gave them a flyer and said, please stop doing that?
What's the benefit of keeping on the books that you're allowed to do it though? You
Nothing.
feel like we're protecting rights of someone to throw the leaves in our pond? I don't know.
No,
That's my only thing.
I'm just trying to.
There's so many
save
more
us
water
some
areas.
work.
Well.
I would also say maybe, if we move a little more slowly, maybe there's a reason for things we might want to include along with that.
because there's more than one body of water in Fairhaven.
I mean, all bodies of water, that's what I'm saying.
I'm suggesting if that's a good idea and that's the way we want to proceed, there may be additional language having to do with other stewardship practices that we might want to include. So
I'm not in a rush, I just think if we can make a
yeah,
quick impact that can be beneficial, I wouldn't wanna wait. But I'll talk offline with everyone and see where you guys wanna go with. I don't wanna take any more time on that one. That's all I had. Anyone else with?
Yeah,
Yep.
definitely.
Sure.
This is a fabulous body of work and my compliments to everyone who's been participating in this, and I'm so pleased that, Chris has been available and supportive and providing me with, connections to professionals. I also, wait, let me go back to my question. And in any of the conversations you had with the professionals, did they say that some combination of, the intervention or the interruption, as you refer to it, the fix and the maintenance strategy, once we get to maintenance, provided we do all the right combination in the right sequence and all of those things. Did they say that we would only, the pond now breaches as it is supposed to do from time to time, but we all can probably agree it's happening a little more frequently than it should. But did they say that the right mix of interventions and maintenance would reduce the number of times the pond breaches the banks on the north end and floods third and?
So specific to flooding, I don't believe we really pressed them on trying to get their input to solve the flooding. So Rich, Nick, me, Chris, we met one afternoon. We talked about it at a high level. The drain's really old. I mean, I don't know. Well, I don't know how to put a finer point on it.
I know that what you're saying is the outfalls are performing and it's working, even in its worst condition, you're saying, okay. The reason I asked that to do mostly with the park, as meager as it may be and very compacted, I take your point about them providing proper platform for fishing, so because it's so compacted, but that flooding exacerbates it over time, and it affects our ability to make proper improvements in that area to make it a little bit better. So maybe there's a way to channel it, so it doesn't take out the whole, even though it's a small part, that whole small part. Maybe it's a breakaway just in one segment of the banks closer to the street.
Are you talking about the, like a platform? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, there's a.
No, but that's the thing,
there's
that's what
section
we're
of-
referring to, sorry.
The platform would provide a place for recreational purposes that would keep people from tamping down the banks even further on the north end. And the reason I was talking about it is because I wanted to see if we could explore how to keep the water off of the park area and just into that one breakaway in the corner there.
Essentially the emergency overflow.
Yes.
It's like a bathtub.
If there's a way,
Like, it's like a
yes,
bathtub, like when it
exactly.
gets to a certain level, it spills over.
Yeah,
And so I don't,
It's
it was
supposed
implemented in, 40, 60 years ago.
Rich.
but right now that takes out the whole northern edge. It's not limited to that one bathtub outlet.
Well, so the last time that overflowed, I'm not saying it's fixed, because we certainly don't know it is, but I'm asking Rich, will the two things we've done since then help at all? We
cleaned out any obstruction.
and then we connect, is that on Linden? What was that on? Then we connect drainage, or used to not be connected as well?
That takes out some of that sheet flow, yes, and redirects it down towards the Borough.
Yeah, I'm not saying that'll fix it, but that, I'm hoping that'll help. a little bit as
That
well.
does assist a little bit.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I've said what I was trying to convey very well.
You're talking about when it reaches or it overflows.
And it overflows
So try
across
to
the
direct
entire
it,
northern
not take
boundary.
out any further improvements that are installed.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly, right, yeah. So anyway, so.
So the quick answer is, any of the providers that I spoke to, Mike spoke to, Chris spoke to, we did not specifically come at that conversation from trying to solve that particular issue.
Mhm,
We were more talking about the ecology and the health of the pond itself.
mhm. Yeah, you've done an amazing job. I'm grateful. The only other thought I have, and I personally think the education piece is so critical. And I think it actually is kind of low-lying fruit, just to start that conversation would be useful, even if it takes 2 years for it to sink in, because these conversations take time for people to adapt to something new. They have to hear it a few times, so. Is the 43-acre watershed within the boundaries of Fairhaven? It looks like it is.
It is, yeah.
So Betty Ann will probably be able to pull those addresses, and the reason I'm asking.
It shows, in fact, the watershed ends at the end of Buttonwood Drive, there's this beautiful house up on the hill. And it looks like it cuts the house in half. The watershed.
So she'll have each and every address, and where I'm going with this is that initial contact, because I also think neighbors talking to neighbors is a really effective way to share their experience and say what's easy and what are you trying. But I want to suggest that initial communication to not just the properties around the pond, but within that, or the whole catchment area, that come from an official, or just whether it's a scientist that's certified a certain set of best practices, or a borough official, such as our engineer, or, and then residents talking to residents, you've given them a springboard from which to begin a friendlier conversation.
Makes sense, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for all your hard work. Really
I just have
nice
a-
job.
You know,
2 minutes?
sure.
First of all, phenomenal work. You, the whole, astounding. So I'm very, very happy with what you guys did. Nice work. I'll follow up in email too. But just kind of 2 things. One, our innovation premium here, right, is small, right? Meaning that we're not the first town with the pond that this has happened to, meaning that we're not the first town come up with a solution about what they're dealing with, right?
Correct.
And that's fantastic, right? Because there's other examples that we can leverage lessons learned, what worked, what didn't, to kind of
Not really.
bring.
There aren't too many ponds where we have houses on top of the pond that we have. So like Spring Lake, Rumsden, those houses are much further away. We don't really, I mean, we looked, right? We don't really have a like for like.
In the
So
whole country.
Well, it's like 2 different things. So
In terms of.
I'm not trying to be funny, right?
Well, in
Like,
terms of like the.
think of all
same sort
golf
zone.
courses, right? Think of golf courses that are on lakes, right? Those
Right,
houses.
the houses are not on the pond, you know what I mean? There's
Okay,
not
all right,
14 houses
fair.
on the.
I could be mischaracterizing it, but I'm just saying,
So maybe I'll say what I think I'm hearing you ask. The solutions that are applied to fix bodies of water like this. It's not like there's hundreds out there. There's a
Right.
finite
it's
number
fine,
of solutions.
exactly,
And we're not like leading edge technology.
correct.
Like there are new innovations and I mentioned one solution was the pellets, in the report, it's the MD pellets that is the beneficial bio. Mike found another company that does something similar but delivers it through an aeration system. And it's an advancement in that technology, but it's still fundamentally
Correct.
beneficial back to.
And every situation is unique. It's never identical, right? But people have tried all different combinations to see what works. That's the first thing. The second thing I'd say is that what would only further enforce the presentation is taking key practicalities and grounding it against what the regulatory requirements are. So what I mean by that is, I'll pose 4 questions. 1, what do we do with the emerging wetlands, right? Because before you come up with a cohesive plan, if 30% out of that 2.4 acres has converted, and the decision point to not do anything would greatly impact how you approach the remaining 70% versus if the governing body said, hey, yeah, you know what, take it all back, right? That would change potentially your phase in your approach. The second thing is I would look at the specific guardrails that the DEP puts on us. So I'll give you a very clear example. You can't hydro rake after March something, April something, because that's when the fish eggs spawn and you can't disrupt it, right? And what starts to emerge as you ground the work that you did, which is fantastic in that, you start to create a funnel of actually what's practical and what we can actually do. So I'll write this up, I'll CC the liaison, but we did a very similar exercise with the facilities projects, right? We did a very similar exercise when we did multiple of the DPW and engineering projects, right, especially going out to the public, and send it to you. So just wanted to pass that on.
Thanks.
Michael, you got anything?
No, I was part of this committee, so he's done an amazing
That's awesome.
job.
Thank you.
Sean.
Thank you very much.
May I-
Very much appreciated.
One more thing, there's an interesting notion in here about the benefits of potentially maintaining some of what has occurred on the south end. And I assume that for the filtration benefits and how that might aid the positive ecosystem as a whole. If there's a way to, I don't know, quantify that or touch on, expand on it perhaps in your next round of.
Well, I mean, you and Drew are saying, you're pointing at the same thing.
Similar.
So I would say, as the leader of this committee and a member of this research body, we need input from you guys.
Yeah.
Which was not given in July, which is the budget. And so I can tell you all the different variables that you need to look at in order to make your decision. But if you can't say you've got 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 a year, every 3 years, whatever it is, this body is gonna be a little bit lacking in what it can provide back to you. And you're gonna get similar results that you've gotten in previous years that you've done this. So if there's one thing that you could do for us, it would be to come back with real, it doesn't have to be like down to the penny, but it could be, you know, you've got this much to play with on an annual basis. You could accrue that over 3 years and have a lump sum, that could be an answer too. But short of that, it's gonna be another dialogue like this.
And on that, maybe, well, perhaps this is a question for Chris and we could take it up later, but this interruption phase or the intervention phase obviously will take more than one go,
Yes.
which will mean impact on the budget over a period of time or budgets, meaning years. Hopefully not too many, but that would be a good way for us to, I'd like to know recommendations from you in terms of how much we can find
Yep.
for how many years and whether or not that's gonna be sufficient to complete this interruption phase and feather in the fix and the move to maintenance.
Brian?
Yeah, great job. Everything in here looks like it's fairly non-controversial, with maybe the exception of the geese control. Did anyone share with you how that's done, or is there a standard practice? I'm thinking about the deer, which has caused a lot of, you know.
Very natural areas proposed a deer/geese hunt.
But is it a hunt or capture and release somewhere
Yeah.
else? Did he, or maybe he didn't get that far?
But we didn't think about, I should say, we didn't put any line thought to the long-term part. You know, there's the black cutout dog,
Yeah.
there's some fencing, you know, there's that first house, you know, just, you know, right by the park itself. And she's put up that kind of like metal, very rudimentary, like garden fencing to try to keep the geese off the lawn. It doesn't work.
They have companies that do it, and there's lights as well.
Geese police.
Reflective.
Yeah, it's something like
That's
that,
in geese
yeah.
If someone's got a sheepdog that wants to run out there on a daily basis.
I'll bring my dog.
Yeah.
I think that's low hanging fruit where like we don't have to spend money. We should be able to put a cardboard dog out there or something, get some results.
Thank you.
Sean, if you don't mind, just while you're here, I don't wanna make you leave, I'm gonna, Mark had a comment. If you still have one.
I have some questions.
Sure.
First of all, thank you so much for all the work.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. I completely understand the notion of, so tell me how much money we have. And we can develop a course of action. I'm wondering, and perhaps I missed it in the presentation, if this started out with a vision. And the vision says, so under the best of circumstances, what could this be? What do we want it to be? Because when we talk about, well, we can hydro rate for 10 days, we can do all this. Well, why? What was the objective when we did that? And so a lot of experience would say, you start out with a vision, and then you build the strategies and all the other stuff against that vision. I'm not sure I exactly understand the vision. I just want to qualify that a little bit. Are we saying that that pond is going to dry up? Period. End of discussion. It's a matter of time, but it's going to dry up. Or are we saying that in fact, given an amount of money, we can in fact have a really great looking pond that does everything we want in terms of quality of life and opportunity for recreation. I'm not exactly sure I understand. So what are we saying we want out of the pond as opposed to saying, well, how much money do we got? And I'll tell you what I can do. I think there's a difference, and I'm wondering whether or not we have started that way. So let me just recap.
So I got it. So I would say the committee, that was, one of the slides had like what the committee's, kind of our guiding principles, like what were we tasked to do? And part of that, one of them was expectations. So the 9 of us kind of decided like what were our expectations. And then when we had the community sessions, we polled and we got those expectations. What we came back to was the thing is we don't want the pond to go away. Vision statement number 1. So we could do nothing, spend no money, stop talking about it, stop wasting volunteer hours, stop wasting our time here. And let it just go. It might run for another 10, 15, it might run for another 50 years. And portions of that pond might still be pond. I think some of us are worried that rate of succession is increasing, especially moving south north. And so we didn't, the vision was to maintain the recreation and the aesthetic appeal that we have today.
For as long as we can,
For as long as we can.
based on some level of income or some level of investment we think we can get from the town?
Yes.
And then, and we've quantified that?
And if, we're in the process of saying, if we do, you know, A, it's gonna cost us this much in year 1, year 2, year 3, that's where we are at the moment. And so to your point and what I said earlier, I could come back here and present you with a timeline, a project plan almost of here's what you could do. But if that says we need to spend 200,000 in year 1 and then 50,000 in year 2 and then 30, you know, and you look at me and you say, we don't have $300,000 in the next 3 years. So I'm like, what was the point of us doing that exercise? Just to have you say no. So I understand the dialogue is helpful, you know, to say, okay, we didn't know what we needed to do. Now we know what we need to do. So the vision, as far as I'm concerned, and Mike, you can correct me if I'm wrong, we wanted, so many kids are out there skating these last couple of weeks with how cold it's been. We want to see them skate. We don't want them like tripping over brush and you know, trees that are growing where the pond should be. We want the fishing derby every spring. We want kids there all summer long fishing and not pulling up a fish with like coated in green pond scum. That's what we want to get back to.
So those are some pretty specific objectives. So presumably a budget might be built. I'm not trying to limit this, by the way. I think as much as we can spend, we can spend. But now when you say, okay, we want an ice skating resource, we want a fishing resource, and we want.
But no, if we fix the pond, we'll allow the resources to be fixed.
Take them.
So if we fix the pond, I mean, we'll have skating, we'll have fishing.
Yeah.
Not everything we're gonna restore too.
Yeah, so, but we have some investment level.
Yes.
Right, we start to have some investment level, so we could go to the bank and say, okay, for $100,000 a year, here's what it looks like, for 200,000, that would, I think that would give the town a sense of, what is the threshold of pain the town is willing to enjoy to sustain what levels of recreation and.
I, for one, can say, I agree with the vision of priorities set. I agree, it needs to be maintained as a beautiful recreation area that's enjoyed 4 seasons. I also agree that, to the extent it's a part of our stormwater infrastructure, it should function as best it can. And that it is a visual amenity as well. So just so you hear that, I'm sure other council people feel the same. He feels like stating the obvious, but so you get that feedback, but fully support what you're saying.
Hi, Marty Ender, 33 Hands Road. That one slide that you put up where you had the pictures with the various stages, there were 4 stages. Do we have a sense of what stage we're in with the pond?
That bottom left.
Yeah, that's what I was.
Yeah, so we've got a lot of aquatic plant life,
Yeah.
and we have a lot that's starting to, I don't see a lot. We have aquatic plant life for sure.
Right.
We have aquatic plant life that has reached the surface of the ponds.
Um,
We know from 2016 that the depth of the pond is not the 3.5 feet average depth that it was originally. And we haven't had a survey done since 2016, so
Two fish in the pond.
we've got plenty of fish, we've got turtles, we've
From
got.
the picture.
That's the good news, is we have a lot of aquatic life in the pond.
And so nobody was able to establish a timeline as how, if we don't do something now, how much time does the pond have left? That's really an unanswerable question.
I don't know if it's unanswerable or we just haven't sought out the
Well, I thought maybe
academic
because of the
resources
spring, that makes
required
it more
to do
difficult, yeah, the water spring. Thank you.
Thank you. Sure. Carolyn?
Carolyn Ferguson, Seven Colonial Court. You mentioned that the pond was formed by damming a creek, and I think I read elsewhere, I'm not sure if it's true, that was by damming Fort Creek.
It's 100 years ago, I don't know, yeah, but it feeds in, you know, it goes under the drain and it goes under Columbus Club and it keeps going towards.
Yeah, I was just curious, because I was wondering about, the Fourth Creek probably has some issues too. I wonder
Just a few.
if the damming causes both, or maybe.
Thank you. Great work.
All right.
All right, we are now moving along to workshops. We have our workshop about the workshops. Councilwoman DiMichelli, would you like to?
Sure, I will keep this brief. So I'm on the communications committee and I am again this year. And one of the things that I know we do a lot of really good things and we're always trying to improve how we communicate with the residents, how we communicate with each other, how we communicate with the committees and commissions. So this is an effort to hopefully streamline that and also make us be able to deliberate more as a governing body. Because I find that sometimes we get up here and because our meetings go to 11, we don't get a chance to deliberate as much. So this would be, some municipalities have workshops before their council meetings. So what would happen is, we would introduce, any old business. We would talk quickly about any old business, so we could talk about anything that came up in this meeting at the next workshop. So to follow up with any questions, maybe outstanding questions we had. And then we would go into workshops. And then we would finish up with any kind of old business or new business that we want to bring up. So the idea is that we have an hour designated from 6 to 7 before every meeting for workshops. And this would help us not run into 11 o'clock at night. It would allow some residents who maybe just want to be here for the workshops to come for that set hour and not have to sit through as long of a meeting. And that's pretty much it. I just, I just would like to communicate a little bit better as a whole and allow, because I value everyone's opinions and I value everyone's feedback. So I want to be able to deliberate a little bit more as a governing body. And I felt like this might be a way to do that.
This would be.
What happens if it goes longer than an hour?
I know, and that's kind of where I get a little stuck. So, because we do tend to talk an hour, but maybe this would kind of cap us, and we know we only bring up 3 items. I mean, I was kind of gonna test it on how long it would take us to get through this workshop session, like these 4 items, and see how long it does take us.
All right, so we're moving on to Fifth Chapel.
So my question is, you're suggesting this as a way of having a more in-depth conversation.
Yes.
But if we have a more in-depth
I know.
conversation, then we're gonna run out of time.
I know, and that's where I get a little bit stuck. Because, I mean, that's where I wanted to talk it through, because I think in some ways it would allow us to know that we're gonna talk about things. We know that we have a chance to talk about it, but we tend to have a lot to talk about.
I think there are some matters that would warrant something like that.
Yeah.
And I also
the
think
intent
that.
is great. I just don't know about the execution. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
that's kind of where I'm
wanted to
going.
ask you is that
What if we just
sometimes our workshops really need, I'll just finish.
Yeah.
I know that when I deliberate with you guys, I like to have some analysis provided by our professionals, some recommendations from our lead staff or whatever department head he feels is appropriate for us to hear from. And I think that really aids the deliberative process. So if we all had that data and announced prior to a designated workshop period, I don't know that it would just, I think it would focus the discussion. I'm not so much worried about the amount of time
Yeah,
as I am using it judiciously.
yeah, having the information going into it to be able to.
So I just don't understand. I understand your request.
Yes,
You're saying if you have the information available to you, we all get the packets on Thursday before the meeting. We have the ability to ask any question we want to any of the experts. Am I missing?
I thought you were, yeah, I wasn't talking about that. I thought Michael was proposing. I might have not been clear about what you were bringing up, but I heard you say something, a mechanism that we could use from time to time on a specific matter, maybe even something that's not on the council agenda, but it's just on the workshop agenda.
it could be both ways, to be
Well,
honest.
you'd have to announce the meetings, and that's
Yes,
what you're
right.
trying to establish here, so you can't just say, oh, I'm gonna choose to do a workshop meeting this day, and then I'm gonna
Yes.
change it for the next month, and it would have to be uniform, and would have to be published as well.
Yes.
It's supporting dialogue.
Yeah.
And it's taking specific workshop items and putting them before the start of the meeting in a publicly approved way to have that dialogue. You're not gonna do 7 workshop
No,
items in an
We
hour,
would be able
maybe,
to.
maybe it forces 1 or 2 or how many you have to do, but the thought process is to do it and.
In your,
Mhm.
you're saying start at 6, I don't see that changing. The only thing that does is potentially make the meeting 1 hour earlier than it ends, but it's the same amount of deliberation time, stress, so we're still gonna be the same tired at the end of the meeting. So I guess my question is, would it just benefit moving the work? I think for the most part, the workshops are at the beginning of the meeting. It's usually what we do first. Andrew, what you said, if we get to a meeting, let's say we get to a meeting next month and there's something on there where we know there's a workshop. We know we're gonna have a lot of people in the public come in. We know it's one of those like 2-hour marathon type situations. Can we just change that one meeting for 6 PM if we advertise? I mean, that's a question for Allison. How does that work?
You saw it, I mean, I guess if you knew in advance, then you'd have to just change the time.
Yeah.
At the,
Can you
at the, at
change
the, at the
for
previous
additional-
meeting, you'd have to change the
The
time.
previous meeting, right?
Yeah.
Well, maybe the answer is, in that situation, we could potentially push a workshop to the following meeting if it's
Yeah.
not time sensitive. If we wanted to give some extra time to it.
So Long Branch does do this, and they do it once a month. So
Ah.
they have it not every single meeting, so this could allow us, if we do find that we have a lot in a month to talk about, that we can focus 1 extra hour instead of having a marathon, I don't know.
I
mean,
also, sorry.
No, I mean, to be honest, like, this is why I want to talk it out, because I had all these sort of hangups. It's just, one of the things that, for me, is that I know I keep harping on this, but like the committee reports and commission reports, we did take that off, and I still find that that would be helpful information for us to have, and it like still hasn't come back. So.
Good.
Yeah.
So, at the end of last year, obviously, the last few meetings were very short and succinct. That's usually what I found now, it is seasonal. In the summer and like late in the year, we have very short meetings. Beginning of the year, in the fall, the meetings are much longer.
Yeah.
I think that all of us collectively too, including myself for sure, my stupid jokes, like if we could potentially do more research before the meeting and be more prepared with questions and getting the information beforehand. I've even looked into Robert's rules a little bit. I certainly want to give everyone the appropriate time to speak, but also I think we could be more efficient as a group if we stick to the parameters of the meeting. So I'm trying to find that balance for everyone.
It is hard though sometimes. I mean, like, I started reading on Thursday. We all have lives, so
Sure.
it just depends on
Sure.
the packet though. So this would have been a good meeting to maybe have an early workshop, since we have 4 meetings, then we had Sean's presentation, so.
So where I was going with that is this is a heavier meeting than we've had in a while. I think big portion of that is because we had much smaller meetings at the end of December. This is really our first heavy lift for the year.
It's all the contracts.
I also think the last few years with the facilities and some of the projects we've been doing, we've had these heavier meetings. I don't wanna jinx it, because the next thing you know, we'll be in here doing the same thing, but I guess my response to you is I don't, there's nothing that makes me wanna act on this right now, but I have an open mind to it. And I feel like if this opportunity comes up in the next 2 months or so, 3 months, and we discuss, hey, maybe this is a good chance to try it,
Yeah.
I would be open to it.
I mean, I'm fine sort of seeing how these meetings go and just see if this would help us at any point. Like if we're finding that we are going really long and we have a lot of things that.
That we need to make a change.
Because I do know that they're like the workshop for the workshops. This was last November that we started.
Sure.
It like, so
Correct.
it took this long to get on.
Yep.
So I don't know if that might have, having a 6 o'clock start, maybe that could have gone on at some point.
I probably didn't understand, all right, Drew, I probably didn't understand what you were bringing up, because I think, when you look at a certain issue for the agenda, you might know, hey, this is a big one. We also really want all our residents here. There's a lot of data. We're gonna get it out early. And we're gonna roll out a map and we've got charts. If there's a lot to really digest and metabolize as a body, that to me is what would justify the kind of thing you're talking about. I don't see it as like a regular recurring or automatic.
Would
thing,
would you be able to, what I'm trying to discern in my head is how this is not, I know it's not this moment, but how it's not just once a month moving the meeting up by an hour. Like, would you be able to get like some detail on, by having the workshop before the governing body meeting? What do they achieve by doing that, as opposed to just moving the meeting from 7 to 6 and just giving us an extra hour, like, because.
Their meetings are so different.
No, I know that, but that would be helpful, like, to see like,
Yes, I will
what discipline does it cause the governing body to have, like,
Yeah.
all right, guys, this 1 month, this is the workshop time, other than that, unless there's some critical.
I mean, they really do use it to discuss everything. That's when they talk. So during their actual meetings, they really don't.
Probably all Robert's rules.
So it is very
Yeah.
Robert's rules, so.
I love the intent, Michael, I really do. The execution's hard, but I'm willing to try it as well.
So we'll keep it on as a.
Let's see.
If there's a
We have a
topic and you
really
have an
good
idea,
workshop.
hey, maybe we try it, let me
Yeah,
know and
absolutely.
go with that, okay? Much like Kramer achieved the coffee table book of the coffee tables.
See?
We've
That's another
achieved
5
the
minutes.
workshop of the workshops, and another stupid joke.
Good, how about-
Fifth Chapel parking lot bid.
Yeah, so we have a 87-page PowerPoint, maybe we wanna push this to the next workshop. Alice, do you mind bringing up the PDF? No, there's not a PowerPoint, though. Don't worry. I will never do another PowerPoint ever again.
Do that.
It's all right, just right here, this is the only one, this is it. Oh my God.
Horrifying that she thought it was.
I know, it's like some
It's only
bad
7 pages.
post-traumatic stress.
PTSD.
I know, from all the.
Definitely. Don't worry.
Okay, so we want to level set on Fish Chapel parking lot and bring everybody up to speed. Mayor, if it's okay with you, I'd like to address some like facilities updates with this, because it's one and the same. Okay, awesome. So Fish Chapel, as you know, we have the relationship with Fisk AME and the easement that we now have at the parking at the church. We are getting to the time in the project specific to the PD and Community Center, where we have to finalize the site considerations so that the PD can move out of the old building into the new, knock down the old building. And the intent is that we have to put this out to bid, if you recall, but the intent is that the site work all gets done concurrently at the same time. So when the community center's open, that the additional 31 spots here are also open with it as well. Can you zoom out real quick? So there are really 4 main points here that we'll talk through briefly. So point 1 is we went through several iterations with the church and the chief from an operational management safety perspective. And ultimately, this design of the parking lot was struck. The church had to take it up to their trustees, because there's a group of trustees that oversee the church. There were significant operational considerations, and I'm not gonna talk about police SOP in a public meeting, but there is standard operating procedures and protocols as to why it looks like this.
Can you orient us?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Can you zoom out a little bit more? You can go to 100, go to 125. Oh, that's perfect. Go one more. Oh, that's it.
That's it.
All right.
You might have to slide it.
You can do, I mean, yeah, you can do like control and back scrolling. So Fish Chapel, you see the church, the three buildings, number 38, existing one story and existing.
They can't. No,
No, no.
go Drew.
Here.
Pointer.
Oh,
I'm
Yeah.
confused.
So right-hand side is Maple Avenue, right?
Okay.
This is Fish Chapel. This is the existing building, and that's where they rent out. This is the new PD, new community center. This is where the new parking lot's going. This is where the current police department is. And Fisk is up here. Is that okay? Alice, I'm actually gonna zoom it out.
This is police, new community.
Perfect, there we go.
Old.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So there's three things that, so four things. So one is the design. Okay, now, everybody on Fisk Street, if you recall from the PD Community Center project, we're expanding Fisk Street, right? Because it has the bottleneck. And what is happening here is the entire stormwater infrastructure is being enhanced and improved as part of that. So on top of Fisk Street, on the top of the page is Fisk Street, widen it all of there. That's very, very critical because what we're trying to do and what we're looking to avoid is this is all now parking lot. Yes, they might use pervious asphalt, but nonetheless, there is all rocks here now. So the concern is the stormwater impact. Does everyone see, it looks like a light? What does it look like, guys? Help me there.
A water bottle.
Well, it looks like an upside down water bottle in between the new parking lot and the existing structure. Does everybody see that? So that is a catch basin.
Bioretention.
Thank you, sir. And it's being designed to handle 100-year storm. So that everything from the parking lot and the roofs go into that. And we were actually reducing the water that impacts the stormwater infrastructure. Now.
From the one side or both sides?
Yeah.
That's the new McCarter pond.
Now, what's important to note here is in the new PD Community Center parking lot, there's a whole bioretention system under there that's meant to capture all that water. Because of the topography, the church is lower than the PD. So they couldn't tie them together. Now, when we met with everybody being the architects, engineers, Rich was there, Nick was there. We were happy with the stormwater solution that they had here. But if anybody knows stormwater management here, there's some significant issues on Maple Avenue. There's issues that go down into Fisk. So what they just completed and conducted is doing 2 test pits here. And they're looking to put another size system here to take the sheet flow from Maple Avenue and retain it on site. So we have the parking lot design and we have the significant stormwater infrastructure enhancements to do 2 things. One, any of the stormwater flow from here be retained on site and naturally, what's the word, Rich? Not deplete into the water. Recharge, thank you, sir. And then also add another system here that is gonna help mitigate the stormwater issues that exist from Maple down to Fisk and then so on.
Would the system under the parking lot here be like pavement and then everything under the pavement? Okay.
And they went through a whole, Rich can speak to it, they went through a whole type of design that you do to accommodate the way it looks like and.
Is it like a dry well?
It's not a dry well, but it's like a dry well, but it's not officially called a dry well.
But where does the water have to come into? I'm sorry to think back to like my property, but they made it so the corner, like there's one corner where all the water has to come into, so.
They'll add all enhancements along here to catch it from Maple, and then everything from here will feed into this basin. So the whole property feeds into here, and that's the way the topography goes. I believe if you go from right to left on the page.
So there'll be natural catching
Yes.
here. feed it into this.
Correct. So this one captures here to alleviate the water going this way. This guy captures everything from the site so that it's not going.
And is the
on site.
pavement still pervious, so it's still going through the
Yes.
pavement too? Okay.
Yeah. We hammered Lear Associates on this, like, if you wanna speak to the stormwater.
Yeah, the thought process is rather than send it through the site towards the bioretention basin, which essentially, you know, we have issues on Fisk and Locust.
Yeah.
If there's a way to divert some of that flow and almost create two separate systems. It all ends up out onto River Road and, well, you know, of course, but it's a matter of how it gets there and how you treat it on site, whether it's the recharge, bioretention, you know, those types of, other green infrastructure we're looking at.
Now, are these, live up to, obviously, the new MS4 and all that, but are we ahead of anything? Are we kind of advanced?
Yeah, we're
From
looking
what?
at implementing advanced, measures and design standards.
And the fact that they're designing it from a 100-year storm, like, right.
And we're also keeping maintenance in mind too, you know, overall maintenance of the system. Because obviously it'll fall on the borough and DPW.
You're saying cleaning out the pipes, making sure the pipes stay clean.
Yeah.
So that pervious asphalt requires periodic breaking.
We haven't
brushing.
finalized the asphalt type,
Oh.
it's being discussed.
We were supposed to have it tonight, but Rick.
But yes, that requires a maintenance for, you know, vacuuming it,
Yeah,
This
is long, I don't know who's, if that's the church or us, and
It's us.
they would need, we would need to.
We,
factor that in.
the way the partnership is established, we maintain that parking lot, we maintain the striping, we maintain the lighting, that's on us, we plow it. That was all part of the agreement.
Okay,
How does the water get out of the retention basin once it's in there?
Is that porous?
So it basically, it's a bioretention, it recharges.
Going into the
There's gonna be, various plants, things of that, it's like an oversized rain garden. essentially.
Correct.
You know, you'll have a small overflow in the event of. But the design, like you had mentioned, is for 100-year storm.
Where would the overflow go? Out to Fisk?
It would tie into a storm
Yeah,
basin,
you can't see it on here.
adjacent to the parking lot of the PD.
So when they expand this street, there's all enhanced stormwater infrastructure here. And the outflow, it might not be the right word, but when it overflows,
Yeah.
it would flow into that infrastructure.
Underground.
Underground,
yeah.
it's a small orifice, it's not a large pipe, it's just a.
And then it would be diverted.
And then it goes into the infrastructure and it's gonna go out to the Navasink down back.
So the right-hand side of the schematic is at a lower elevation than the left-hand side. Yes, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, this is lower, this is a higher elevation.
So what's to prevent the water from the higher elevation flowing into?
This
It has
entire,
its own- That has its own system.
Yeah.
As its own system?
this has a whole stormwater infrastructure system where everything from here flows into here. There's a rain garden here that's not pictured, that we added, so there's 2 areas to.
Bonnie, rain garden.
I can't tell what you're talking about.
I'll show you
trying
where
to
he's,
see,
where he's
but I
pointing.
mean, it's.
on the far left,
Yeah.
where the sidewalk.
left.
On the far left, the white area.
If I had a PowerPoint, Bonnie, there would be a circle around it, you know? Betsy. Okay, so church design, stormwater. If you recall, the property adjacent to the church at the bottom is encroaching on the church. 17 feet in the rear, 11 feet in the front. So there's good, you know, we're having the new fence. The one thing that we talked about, and he's not here tonight, is ensuring from a continuity perspective with the landscaping that everything's cohesive across. So, and I don't know if Nancy's here. So these are 2 separate projects. We're gonna go out to bid. We're not using the facility funding for this. There likely will be a small change order to the PD project to tie in the stormwater infrastructure that's required here. And our professionals recommended that change order because they say you don't want to stop one contractor with the stormwater and then pick it up, just finish it. So that's design, that's stormwater, that's landscaping, and then there's gonna be the appropriate lighting through here We went through the same exact process. If you recall back when we did the facility project, we evaluated the lumens, we evaluated how far the light was gonna be thrown off. We did all of that work. It is completely consistent here. Maybe.
If you do, maybe sit at Allison's desk and just
I
move
was
the
just
pointer
gonna
from
say,
what
do you
you
want to
were.
know the people?
Drew, now he's in the cockpit. Drew, if you're not using facility funding, how are you paying for
We
it?
put 300,000.
No. Just to explain.
Yeah.
We're not using the current facility POs to haul construction. We are using bonded funds from facilities.
Okay, that was already bonded.
So, yes.
We've
it's
already
nothing
approved
additional.
all that. We've already approved all that.
It's already approved, yes. So it is facility funding, just not from the current purchase orders that are out there.
Where we expect, this is,
This
money,
was anticipated.
it was
Yeah,
anticipated.
Yes.
we talked about this, that we did an ordinance to some, yeah, make it
That's
better.
okay.
All right, so we went over the site design of the parking lot. We hit the retention here. We're gonna have another system here to offset the water from Maple Lab. For those on the video, there's another stormwater system under this parking lot, and for Bonnie, who's in the public, the rain garden is right here on the left. And then I'm gonna move to the next slide. This, it gets into a little bit more granular detail, but you can kind of see what the tie-ins look like. Right, so this was getting back, I don't want to spend too much time on this. But here is, the stormwater infrastructure, Michael, this is where the outflow, right, if it overflow, there's actually two places that it goes.
Okay.
And it shows how it's all interconnected. This does not show the system over here, because after we met with the professionals and we stressed the importance of the stormwater, so the updated design will have it. And so what will happen is, we will bring the design and the bid specs, hopefully at the next governing body meeting, if not after that. We'll look for authorization to go to bid. Rich, 10 days because of the type of project that has to stay out from a minimum.
For advertising.
Yep, then we award it, and then we'll work to ensure that as the site work is finished for the PD and Community Center, we do the same thing as Fish Chapel, so that by the end of Q2, it's fully done, finished and open.
One clarification,
Please, Nancy.
we won't be awarding it at 10 days.
Correct,
We're
correct.
getting bids, going through the
Go through the process, receive it, yep,
It'll come before the council to approve.
100%.
I just want to make that.
No, please, yeah, it's been a while since we've.
We
yeah.
advertise, we set it
Yeah,
up.
the whole process, but it's not advertised 10 days or more.
Check, yep.
The PD would be open before these lots would be done. They'd be in the new building.
They have to.
Because you have to.
We have to finish the site work on the old building. So yes, so we're working with Chief right now on what weekend we're gonna move them over, so that then the site work can finish, which includes tearing down the building. To bring us all up to speed, it's gonna be encased, right? There's gonna be a whole process to do, because there is asbestos inside of it, right? So there's a whole big process. And I remember Josh specifically raising this, because he said, hey, if it's the summertime and there's dust, we wanna make sure that everything's protected, so,
So just timing, generally, like months?
tear down probably March.
Okay.
Mid-March, end of March
Yeah, probably end of March.
is when that will happen. So that's that. So that's kind of expectation setting, going through from start to finish, what we're gonna do from a timing perspective. And we'll tie it in with the overall PD Community Center, which is waiting for permanent power now and kind of going through some
And
critical.
just to update you on permanent power, meter was installed today and permanent power is getting hooked up on Thursday.
Oh, freaking run, that's awesome. Good. Jake, it's been an 18-month process to get permanent power, just to give you guys a year and a half. So,
Drop your name.
any other questions on this?
They love it, they love it.
That's great. No, thank you, Drew.
Yeah, awesome. All right.
Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving along, March 10th council meeting format. Councilman Hoey, would you like?
We called this up a couple times in for the borough, so I'll be very brief. Betsy and I can probably both speak to this since we're working on it together. As everybody knows, we've had traditionally one meeting a year at the Knollwood School, one council meeting per year at the school. And in those meetings, it's been great because we have an opportunity to introduce ourselves, talk a little bit about what we do. But we're really only engaging a very, very small percentage of the students, right, that are sitting with us. And so we had sort of a post-mortem conversation, Betsy and I, with Pam Greenhall at the end of last year to say, what can we be doing since we have such a captive audience to engage the students in a more meaningful way, right? The grades are getting bigger. There's really only a small subset of the students that are interacting in that meeting. So, you know, in the spirit of community engagement, open houses, surveys, everything that we do, there's this huge population of people that we're not necessarily engaging in as it relates to collaboration and diversity of thought. So, you know, what we said is if we did this, we wanted to do it in a meaningful way. And Betsy, feel free to jump in, but we have, you know, plenty of issues, plenty of topics, plenty of problems that we need to, you know, that we're focused on. And so the idea was to pick 6, because there's 6 council members, pick 6 different projects and assign a council member to each section of the social studies classes in the 8th grade. And to go in with those topics and collaborate with those students in a meaningful way to come up with some ideas and solutions. Now, there's no guarantee, there's no promise that we're going to implement anything that they recommend. But for example, I have events, you know, what type of events could we be doing in town? What are we not thinking of? Which audiences are we not reaching? And I basically said to the students, like, there's no guarantees that we're going to put anything forth, but if it's a really well thought out plan, I will do my best. No, I will present it to the council for approval. Now, that's not a guarantee. Everybody does not have to do that. But the idea is to really get them engaged, to get them to be stakeholders, to get them to be a part of the community, for them to be just as much bought into this as we are, because the reality is they're the future of the town, and we want them to be as stakeholders. So, you know, this is really just a build upon all the great work that we've done at these meetings in the past, an opportunity to engage the students in a meaningful way. So I don't know if there's anything more I need to elaborate on, but.
Well, we also talked about having that as for the good of the borough.
Thank you, yes.
And putting that at the beginning of the meeting.
Correct.
Because as time goes on, the students get a little restless. And when we get into the nitty gritty of whether it be a workshop or a consent agenda, they've kind of lost interest. And I actually had a meeting with Sean McNeil today and told him what we were proposing in terms of a change to the way that the meetings had previously been organized. And he was very much in favor of it. He thought it was developmentally appropriate for the 8th graders to get them involved in the beginning of the meeting and then have them leave at an appropriate time.
Perfect. Yeah, and that's actually the key point, is that during Good for the Borough, they'll take 2 to 3 minutes per section to present on their ideas. So the council can hear all of their that would have been thought out, you know, we would talk about budget, we would talk about Jerry's constraints, so by the time they actually present it, it's actually a well thought out plan, so.
Would it be more considered a workshop though? Just because then we can ask questions, you know, then it would be an actual exchange of ideas.
I think that's almost, oh man,
Yeah,
I think it's almost safer, I'm excited about this, and
Yeah.
I've reached out and I'll be setting up my meetings, and I'm grateful for what you guys developed. What I want to avoid is the council being put in a position where we have a bunch of kids who come to us with these fantastic plans and these well thought out things and their budget and their enthusiasm. And, you know, we're like, oh, well, we're government guys, we can't really, I'm hoping we don't kind of set ourselves up for them, you know, honestly, because that's not the intent, I know. So,
And that's
if
part of our
it's a
job.
workshop,
Right.
then it is an open discussion about the ideas and how they develop them.
Right.
Rather than they're gonna make a proposal for approval.
No,
That
no, no.
feels too much.
There's definitely not a proposal for approval. The workshop portion is really supposed to happen with us. So we're supposed to help put the guidelines in place. We're supposed to say there's a budget, there are rules, there are things that we need to follow. That's our job.
Before the meeting.
Before the meeting, so that when they're getting up, it's actually a well thought out plan. Again, no promises that anything's gonna be implemented, but that's our job, is to kind of steer them in the direction that we're steered in, so that they understand the parameters that we need to work under. So for example, I'm sure every 8th grader would love to have turf fields all around Fairhaven. They don't understand what goes into the cost, they don't understand what the impacts are in the environment, they don't understand, so that's our job, is to guide them around all the different frameworks that we are guided on.
The dialogue.
It's a dialogue.
And some of those things might be too technical, we can introduce them. I guess I don't know if I need to say it again, I just wanna make sure that we couch this and don't set them or ourselves up. Obviously, the absence of technical resources, there's only so far we can develop any scheme or idea that has environmental.
Our goal was just to get them involved in a
Yeah.
topic that,
That's
they
great.
could get excited about and think about.
Are they picking the topics or we're picking the topics?
You have your topic. Yours is stormwater.
I'm gonna tell them all,
See,
I want.
Kristen, I love the idea of empowering them. I love the idea of having a dialogue, and I think if we can get them excited and fired up and interested, happy, like, that's what we should be focused
I'm
on.
gonna tell them all I wanna do
Full
everything,
buy-in.
but Councilwoman Cole didn't wanna do it.
Yeah.
I think they're gonna be fired up about stormwater.
Also, we can see how much.
It should be.
Their guidance counselor, Pamela Greenwald, and, she thought this was a really good way to get the kids engaged
Yeah.
in what the council was doing.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
are you
this is
gonna-
like one group of, stakeholders that are around the same age. We're not engaging students in any meaningful way, and that's a whole population of really bright minds, and we should be.
So can we not call it the good of the borough?
You can call it whatever you want.
I mean,
You can call it good for Drew.
I mean, the reason I'm leaning towards workshop is one, that is the order of business, so we wouldn't actually be going out of order.
Yeah.
So it would be technically, and I think that like if I, like my workshop for workshops,
Yeah.
like. I brought it to you, we discussed it, so I kind of still,
Okay.
I'm like leaning towards that, I think it's an awesome
Yeah.
idea. I think it's gonna be a great way to engage them. The question is, are we then running through the meeting as a regular meeting too after that?
How about this? I know what you're trying to achieve. I don't think what we classified as is that important, because it's a special type of meeting that we do. I'll work with Allison. We could make it a presentation. I mean, I don't
Yeah,
think.
something like that, but yeah.
Yeah.
But
As
it's,
long as
but are we
get through
running
that,
through a regular meeting?
And then after we get through that, we're still going to have a regular
Okay,
meeting.
That's my question.
Yeah, that is our,
We're not kidding.
that's our announcement. They might be gone for
Eliminating the
it.
meeting, we're changing the.
But do they
order.
If they catch a little bit of it, that's
They
fine.
just wanna leave.
Right, I think it depends how long the other portion
Yeah.
goes, but if we can get some of the meeting in with them, great. If not, at least they had something that's potentially a little bit more productive, I guess.
And we're
Maybe
gonna
we
leave it
can
up to the
accomplish
teachers
it.
when it's appropriate.
And they'll pick like a representative to then present to us.
Yeah, each class has a representative. It's listed on that document.
So it's great, they shift from being observer to participant.
Exactly.
And you want us to engage as a governing body with them, right? Like, we can ask them questions, we can.
It's you guys.
Oh, we're trying to keep it to
We're
2
trying
or
to-
3 minutes,
we're
so.
trying-
Yeah,
Two
we're
or
not.
three slides. No.
No, we are.
She's the
Listen.
teacher.
I think we need to, I don't know is the
You
answer.
can't put a time limit on creativity,
I think we
Betsy.
gotta keep an open mind. I think it's great. Look, at the end of the day, these are the future running.
No, I love
people
it.
who are running for council.
No, I love it.
All
I think
gonna be
it's great.
excited about having skin in the game. So, keep an open mind, people.
Thank you for your work putting this together. Fantastic. All right,
Great job, Chris.
so the next one, I mean, I don't anticipate a long conversation here. I think just conceptually, I wanted to bring up an idea and I had discussed this idea with Chris. And then I happened to run into this young lady. She was with a Girl Scout troop at a basketball game, and she came up to me and she said she had an idea, and it was basically the same idea that we had had. So the borough owns a piece of property right next to Schwenker's Pond. It's actually a pretty sizable piece of property. And right now, there's really nothing going on there at all. I keep trying to spin my head around as far as how we can use it. And one of the ideas that we had, and there's no timeline, there's no budget right now. It's just to see whether you think you'd be interested in something such as this. There would be some sort of nicer welcome to Fairhaven sign. Well, maybe whether it's a brick signage or something in that capacity with some enhanced landscaping around it. Potentially, we have a lot of people that come into town. I would probably guess that's, between that and Ridge Road, obviously, those are the two main ways that they come into town. And it might just be a nice way to welcome, not only residents home when they're away from town, but also visitors into our borough and, set the tone for their time spent in Fairhaven. So I didn't know if that was something, obviously it's budget permissible and you know, we would want to all approve the design of it. But I didn't know if you guys had interest in potentially putting something there.
Can I chime in?
Sure, absolutely.
I consider that one of the major entries into Fairhaven, and of course, I think we can all agree it needs some attention. Whether that's, addressing Schwenker, which needs some cleanup, and not to change it, of course, because it's quite picturesque, but it's eutrifying, it's solidifying, it's kind of a big environmental issue going on there. Changing the sign and ignoring those larger issues might seem a little tone deaf, throwing out there. But there are other things that we could also address. There's no real landscape design there, and that's a very effective way of creating a sense of entry and threshold to once, a sense of arrival. But with the natural buffer and the open lawn area, and there's kind of two appurtenances there, the sign and that electric box. But a good landscape design could conceal certain things and showcase other things. And then
camouflage.
Camouflage. And then the last note I'll make is it's a really popular location for event signage. And I think with some thoughtfulness, we could like some simple infrastructure, we could figure out how that event signage could come and go with the event and not look so bedraggled, but so I love the idea of expanding the lens to include some of those larger concerns and see if we could address that more holistically.
You mentioned landscaping, right? So we include that, yeah.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
I mean, I second what Tracy's saying, because there is, or Councilwoman Cole, because there are larger issues over there, so I do think if we are looking at it, we should probably get like an actual review of what is happening there. But I love the initiative that she's taking also, the student, I think that's wonderful. And I know that in her presentation, she mentioned changing up the look of the sign too, to be more representative of Fairhaven, and she had mentioned like bikes, and I think that was a really kind of cool idea. Maybe we can tie in some like contest or something to go in with this, like kind of make it a bigger deal. But I definitely would support looking at what we can do there, but I do think we should look at it a little bit with a broader scope than maybe just that.
How many Fairfield signs do we have? It's just two?
We have one coming in on Fairhaven Road when you come in from Rumson. We have one on River Road. I think we also have one over by the church, right?
On River.
Yeah.
I mean,
Is there- I don't think there's one coming from Rumson on River into Fairhaven,
There isn't.
right?
So I'll just say, the reason I ask is because I think if you change one, for
Yes.
uniformity and cohesion, you're looking at tweaking the others as well.
Well, this is,
I don't know about that, but maybe,
Well, like
but
Wilson has that big brick.
that's what I mean.
massive sign.
I'm envisioning a different
Yeah,
type of sign at this
Like a
location
different-
than the other two.
Yeah.
You would want a sign that cannot be easily removed, because we had some very, very nice signs that all disappeared.
Years ago, yeah.
I think there's some,
And they were nice signs,
best
too.
They were
practices around
beautiful, but they
wayfinding that have
disappeared,
to do
so it needs to be something a little bit more permanent.
like, but I just wanted to say, guys, I think it's wonderful to contemplate, changes. I really hope that if we get serious about something like this, that we look to a professional who's familiar with the planning and design components. So that we don't sort of do a one-off and then it starts to feel disjointed. It's things we can't anticipate in a conversation now, but with the proper professional guiding us, we could definitely achieve some wonderful things.
But Mayor, you're asking if we would be open to the conversation.
That's all, that's all.
Yeah, yes.
I think you
Yes.
have 100%.
Okay, all right, thank you. We're moving along to public comment on agenda items. This is for agenda items only. Please observe a 3-minute time limit. Please state your name and address for the record. Is there anyone in the public? Public comment on agenda items only. Yes, Susan.
Susan O'Brien, 875 River Road. In the playground presentation, I think I must have missed, how much is the total cost for the playground?
Playground apparatus.
Yeah, how much to install, buy it?
You mean everything, including the fencing, the
The whole
buffer? Yeah, how much was the whole project?
1.2.
1.2.
1.2 million, Susan.
Is an estimate.
And then, because I've been sitting in meetings for a long time, many, many years.
I can remember when the mayor and council had one meeting a month as a workshop and one meeting a month as a regular meeting. And this is going back, 20-25 years. So that's another way to look at this. Thank you. At it that way. Then sometime over the years, someone told me that the pipe from McCarter Pond to Fourth Creek, running under Knights of Columbus, is broken, crushed, whatever. Has it ever been scoped?
From McCarter Pond to.
Under
Fourth
Knights of
Creek?
Columbus.
Oh,
I
to
think
Fourth
so.
Creek.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did. A number of years ago. I don't know offhand. We know, you know,
Can you
that's
confirm
when
it? Because that may explain the overflow
Yeah.
when we have a heavy rain.
Mhm.
And it certainly would be something to reinvestigate, to make sure that it's clear. It's probably just small pipes, something like along those lines.
we have storm jetting in the Fairhaven Road project, so the intent was to use some of that in those areas. The other project also.
Okay, but
Nope.
I thought that, when Hans Road got cleared out, that you scoped it to see how much debris was in there. So I didn't know whether that was a viable option to do from McCarter Pond to Fourth Creek,
Okay.
since it runs under a lot of, hardscape. And
Susan,
lastly,
they scoped McCarter Avenue. That's what was scoped.
That was the last round.
That was the last round that was done with
Part
it.
of the Fairhaven Road improvement.
You're gonna clean out.
We have a line item in those bids to do additional storm drain.
Right, so we'll be able to see underneath the pipe, correct, starting in the spring.
Which you think a different location.
Yeah.
Well, it's at the intersection of.
It's third and Fairhaven Road.
Heading. Yeah.
Third.
So it would be there, because it crosses
Okay.
under.
Got it.
Very
Fair
good.
Road.
Okay.
and lastly, when this street gets widened, how many trees are growing?
So there are 4 trees on Fisk, 3 or 4 which are diseased. And they're being replanted in the new extended. The certified tree expert did it, like they worked on the whole landscaping plan. So if you look at the ones on the church property. They're diseased. There's a whole CT report up on the website if you need it, but they're all getting replaced, 1 for 1. They're street trees.
Did that go to the Shade Tree Commission?
We did that way back.
Bill was involved in that.
Bill, yeah, I mean, everybody was involved.
Yeah.
To include the TDRC.
Bill,
Bill Brooks.
no, the other Bill, Trail Bill.
Well, as long as it got
Trail Bill, I know.
It's public. rights.
Olson, Brian Olson?
Brian Olson, no.
Mark Olson.
Brian, Mark Olson.
Mark Olson.
All right.
Brian Olson.
As long as it's not
Got to the Shade Tree
It
Commission.
did.
Brian Olson, okay.
It did because I remember we
Oh, you were
coordinated
there.
the tree list
We
and the
did
bush,
walk.
all the bushes and everything, so. Yes,
Both legends in the tree, Fairhaven tree circles.
One's
Legend,
legend, the other.
Brian and Mark Olson. All right, thank you, Susan. Yes, former Borough Council President Chris Rodriguez.
Chris Rodriguez, 134 Buttonwood. Just want to say thanks to Sean and the entire committee who's now gone, but also to the governing body and the mayor for putting this together. The reason I came tonight, I didn't read critically and didn't get the package on Thursday, so. I didn't see the agenda. I was gonna come and ask about what are we doing about the pond, and then I got, 80 minutes of excellence. So I'm passionate about it. People were talking about it today while I was walking on Buttonwood, because I do that sometimes. And everybody's supportive of doing things, to improve that pond. So I just want to say thanks. I thought the work was excellent. So I just wanted to, I don't have any questions. I just wanted to make a comment that was pure gold for the folks that live around the pond and the whole town. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Good to see you.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Public, sure. Carolyn?
Sure. Carolyn Ferguson, 7 Point Oak Court. Yeah, I just wanna repeat a little bit. It feels like the pond and Fourth Creek have a relationship and maybe need to be considered together. And as some of these pipes are not always known about and understood how they operate. And some of them were built many, many years ago and may not be operating. So I think that's an important consideration. Then on the sign where you enter, I would just suggest that's important. I know at different points we've talked about like architectural standards or style for the town. Like a sign like that really sets a tone and a style. So I would like, but I don't know if we've ever talked about what is our style.
It's a
you
great
know?
point also.
Like, I would suggest, you know, I don't care what style we use, but we have a historic district. And to me, you know, when we have an option, I think we should lean into that, or that would be a first thought, that might be a better idea.
Yeah.
But I would definitely say like, we shouldn't fight that, you know, so a modern sign might not make sense.
Yeah.
Or like a nautical theme or something else, you know, so just, I think we should think a little bit about what our message is and our style. And then as these little things come up, we can work with them and not against them.
Well,
And as one of the people that puts those raggedy banners up in that space. It's a nightmare to have to do it because as you guys know, there's like asphalt under there. So.
Literally,
Where's my head?
no, if I drilled it this big and drilled it into the ground. Yeah.
It's bad, I've done.
It's terrible. But so we have mentioned before for the business association, like the idea that maybe there could be permanent poles. We've noticed at the Tower Hill Church that they have some very sturdy permanent poles. And if we could somehow do what's there so that we could just come with banners and bungees, that would be awesome. I think it's also an opportunity to define what size of sign is allowed.
Yeah.
You know, if you
That's what I was
guys
gonna
provide
say,
the
yeah.
poles, then you guys are saying
Yeah.
how big or wide they can be. And, yeah, from time to time, I hear people complain about either too many of the yard signs around for events, you know, that can look junky at different points, but I think that's one side benefit that could come out of actually installing a good set of permanent posts there, is that you guys would control the size of what could go there. And that's it, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anything else? Yes, Susan.
I just want to point out that, the site that she's talking about was also one of the dumps in town.
It
Which may
was.
explain why it's difficult to drive anything into it.
Wow.
What was that? Susan?
It was a
It was
dump.
one of the dumps in town.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's not nice, that's great.
Well, we've come a long way, baby.
Really?
That makes sense.
So maybe we built that into the motto, like, don't waste your time in Fairhaven? No?
Spend your time.
Something very efficient talk of here, is that what it is?
Okay, anyone else with a public comment? Item?
A little rusty tonight.
Little breath.
No.
Allison, whoa, okay, all right. Moving along, approval of minutes, December 16th, 2024, regular meeting. January 6th, 2025 reorganization meeting, and January 22nd, 2025 special meeting. Do I have a motion to approve? Second. Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Councilmember Cole,
Yes.
Maselli,
Yes.
Howie,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Alderman,
Yes.
Olson.
Yes. Thank you. Did we already do the facility project?
I just have a
update?
couple more quick points. I just wanna make sure, no, I wanna make sure everybody's cool, so, to make sure we follow process, we're gonna take Fish Chapel to the planning board. We did go through the whole TDRC process and all of that previously, and we told the planning board we'd come back when we were ready to show them the parking lot, so Mayor, if you're cool with it, I'd like to work with Brian to make sure we present to that, to close that loop. Some good news at DPW, our final AOC was cleared, right? So if you remember, the DEP had several areas of concern there. The last one was the stormwater inlet closest to Third. They did all the work they needed to do, sent it out for testing, got the clean fill report back, check. And now our LSRP, Kurt Martin, can submit the DEP report, which is July of 25.
How about the tanks? That's all. Right.
Tanks, they're starting demo next week, February 3rd, February 4th. Chris, Rich, Nick have done a phenomenal job working with Rumson to make sure that while the tanks are down, which is approximately 2 to 3 weeks, we can get fuel out of Rumson. So by the end of February, the new tanks will be completely in, which is great for DPW because we're gonna start site consolidation. We gotta auction off the commercial containers. We have the cohesive landscaping plan coming on Wednesday finally, so that will be coming to the next governing body meeting. And then, we'll be finishing the punch list item, get the DPW team in there, and then come March-ish. I'm told that the day after St. Patty's Day is the day that we'll start. We'll kick off the site work, to finish the site work, fence, landscape, all that. So really good stuff, Mayor. The team is crushing.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. New business, we have our consent agenda resolutions 2025-41 through 65. Before I ask for a motion, does anyone have any questions, want to separate any of these?
I have a question about 41.
Sure.
Just in the contracts, I noticed we were inconsistent about.
Wait, 41
40.
is executive session.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean
Yeah.
41, no, sorry,
43.
43, yes, 43, thank you. That we're not consistent with who the contact in the borough is. Like sometimes we have mayor and sometimes we have administrator. I would just recommend that we have,
It's always the administrator.
there's
The
2 in
mayor.
here that are the mayor. That
But it
specifically say
always
the mayor.
gets
Okay,
filtered.
I didn't know if it mattered, but just to be
No.
consistent.
Fair point.
Answering.
It always
Which
gets
two?
fielded, is that what
Which
that's?
2?
Which two?
I can tell you, the planner and the tree.
Yeah,
Oh, I
send
saw
them
that.
to-
See it. And then the Nigerian says, I mean, and not all of them even say who's the borough. Some of them don't even say that. There's only 3 that actually cite.
Chris, I'm sending them.
But I-
I know, getting cold.
The method or the consistency, obviously in-house, I think that's what you were saying, it gets fielded consistently, even if it doesn't, even if the wording isn't. Well, whatever we can, we should make the wording consistent as well. Not that it's gonna hold anything on tonight, but.
You're here.
All right,
I have one, not 43. I just wanted to, on 2025-51, I wanted to acknowledge and Fairhaven will be receiving the New Jersey Historic Preservation Grant. And in particular, I want to thank the grants committee, but also you guys, Chris York, obviously everyone up here. But our new borough administrator arrived in the nick of time and was really able to work well with that office to demonstrate to them that we're committed to this cause, even if we didn't have the ability to provide a match. And that's how we were able to receive this grant. So I just wanted to acknowledge you, Chris, and thank you for your good work.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Betsy?
I have 3 resolutions I have questions about. 2025-43, 2025-47, and 2025-60.
Okay, start with 43.
On 43, it looks like we are hiring 3 additional consulting engineers or 3 consulting engineers. So we already have 2 engineers on our payroll. So I was curious as to what the responsibilities of the 3 additional engineers would be.
So the 3 additional engineers we have on there, again, they're a continuation of contracts that we've had in the past, and they have different specialties that obviously that our own engineers do not have. We use them for specialized projects again. These are not people that we use on a regular basis, but from time to time, there are certain projects that we have to outsource. For example, for the engineering for our landscaping plan. You know, we use Collier's engineering firm for that. Obviously, that is what their specialty was. So there time to time, there are projects we do have to use outside engineers. And that's something even, you know, Rumson next town over, they have contracts with their various engineering firms as well to handle different outside projects. So that's why we have them there. Again, it's not something we regularly use. We do have engineers appointed in the time if we were to need them, and hopefully we don't have to need them, but if we do, they're there for that reason.
Okay, because okay, and there
Was
are.
there a specific engineer you were questioning about in the list? And I can maybe
Well,
answer.
Sammy Triad.
my question is, are they per diem, are they hourly, how does the financing work for them?
So they're at their hourly rate that's in the contract.
Okay,
And so again, but it's on as needed basis. So, was there one with the triad there?
Yeah, Triad,
Yeah, right.
Sammy.
So triad, Sammy, all those.
Sharon.
Right, so we were to bring them on for a specific
I was
project.
just curious.
Again, it'd be at that hourly rate. again, I can even discuss
So,
even the
for
land.
example,
Yeah, Rich can add to that.
Just a quick comment. So yes, if we need them for a project, which Rich may have been about to say, but if we need them for a specific project, like we have an engineer on 21 Fairhaven Road, we would ask for a proposal with a not to exceed number, and we would either accept it or not, which may equal their hourly rate, but we do get, like, it's not like they just have free reign to charge whatever they want for a project. It's usually, for a specific project, it's usually a proposal, bring it to you guys, you approve it.
The specific example is any road job we do, we don't have a survey. So we get a proposal from one of the consultants for all three to do the survey and the base map for the roadway. And then we take that base map and then that's where we overlay the design, the drawings. We get a proposal, it goes before the governing body for authorization. And that's a special event that's done, we don't have the means to do it. So those types of tasks. But for the most part, yeah, the majority of all the engineering is done in-house.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. My second question is a student representative to finance. So that's probably directed maybe more to you.
Yeah, we've
I
had
don't
him,
remember.
we've had him in the past.
Not aware.
I mean, I don't remember a student representative.
We had one that,
Committee.
we had one that we just took her off, December 31st. Her name was Charlotte Healy. She just got into Boston College. She spent 1.5 years as our student representative on the finance committee.
And what is the function?
So it's mostly for them to learn,
Okay,
that's the bulk of it.
He's not gonna be providing the advice. Trust me.
I saw this and I was kind of astonished because I don't know if we should make this a practice. Maybe,
Astonished.
that's my word for it, because, I mean, I've been elected and duly represented, elected of the people, and I've never served on the finance committee. I consider it sort of the inner sanctum, and, for good reason. It really is where the core issues are. I didn't know that we had someone on finance. I didn't know, maybe because I wasn't on council when the appointment was made.
No, I think you were. You approved the student representative. I'll go back and check.
If you like, I would honestly say I probably would have liked it, because I'm uncomfortable with this idea as a practice.
The student has no voting
I'm
power.
fine with it.
I just,
But I personally think having a student representative on the McCarter Fund Committee would have been advantageous for a kid that's really involved in science, and
That was kind of
how it works.
So the one council person that did reach out to me. Because a lot of council people did not. So the one council person that did reach out to me to ask me the question was Councilwoman Hoey. And she asked me the question, and I said, any of our committees, if someone requested to have a student on there to learn and be a part of it and to further themselves and try to be a good civic member of the community, why wouldn't we be in support of that?
So I'm just wondering, then, I'm not opposed to it. I see the value of having kids mirror us in so many ways. They learn our government and all of that. I was surprised too. I don't remember that we had someone on there, but like to Councilman Koch's point, maybe we should open this up to more kids and like put it out there as like, you know, we call for volunteers for our other positions, for other committees. Why don't we call for volunteers for all the different committees for students? Because it just seems very pointed, like why finance?
So RFH runs a program and they ask their juniors to get involved in different ways. And last year I had a few different students that came to me asking me how they could get involved. That's how we ended up with Charlotte Healy on the finance committee. She had a great experience. And I would actually argue that we probably wouldn't be having as adamant a discussion about this if it wasn't my son.
Oh, that's why I addressed
would.
myself to
I
Brian.
understand that, but I would argue that we would not be having
well, I
that type of
think
discussion.
it complicates it a little for those of us who didn't know there was already another student there, but my main point, I just want to make sure it makes sense, is that students our students, they're teenagers, and a lot of the issues that are discussed at the council committee level, which is different than, say, a commission or a board, or even, say, beautification committee or McCarter Pond committee or bird sanctuary committee. These are council committees where the operational sort of business matters of the borough are being discussed by local leaders and our staff. And I don't think it's an appropriate place for a student, not because they couldn't learn, but because those are sensitive issues that really, I don't know that they would understand what things are acceptable to discuss with friends or parents of friends, and what things are inappropriate. And I don't think we should expect that of them either, but, you know, personally, I don't think it's a good practice. I'm not in favor of appointing students to the council committees. And to be clear, those are the council committees that our staff are advising local leaders, and there's a very specific layer of government there. So other committees, boards, I'm open to that completely, but not our daily operational staff and elected official committees. So I am opposed to that. Has nothing to do with an individual.
Can I ask the lawyer, like, is there any issue?
The internship.
I just wanna make sure, yeah,
I don't know.
it's prior, whatever.
Okay,
No
let's
issue.
move on.
Yeah, astonishing. All right, so let's.
Astonishing, you have to say it the right
let's-
way.
Yeah, okay. Let's, does anyone have any other issues?
I do,
Okay, continue.
sorry. 2025-60, the issuance of sale of bond anticipation notes. I don't know what that means.
I can explain. And
Thank
then
you.
correct me where I mix up. So a note matures in 1 year. And so every year you have to roll the note. So it gets reissued. So it's debt that we already have that's just going to be reissued, and next year will have to be reissued again. We can add a little bit to it. We can subtract, pay some down each year. It's called a rolling of the notes.
So does the cost change from year to year?
Can I add a little something to that?
Sure.
So, the note that we have, we can roll it over up to 10 years. After the third year, we have to make a principal payment. Ideally, the reason that we're doing it this way currently is we have money for facilities. Once the facilities are done, the discussion will be whether or not we go out for permanent financing. Which would then, once we go out for permanent financing, there will no longer at this time be a need for the note. Because we will have permanently financed what we currently authorized.
Okay.
Not to say that there won't be need for notes later. You know, if the council decides to do a different project or whatever, you can always do that again, so I'm not saying that will never happen again. But for the notes that we currently have, they're predominantly for facilities, and once facilities are done, we are going to look to do some permanent financing.
So
Notes are not permanent.
Couple
A
things.
bond is, so permanent financing would be a bond. Bond is permanent, the notes are
1 year.
not permanent. Yeah, 1 year allowed to roll over 10 years, must start making principal after the third year.
So a couple things about it. So yes, the interest rate, it changes every time you issue a bond. So as rates move up and down, the new rate that's prevailing at the
On a
time.
bond,
On a note or a bond.
okay.
So on the day that it's issued, the day that it's created, there's a market rate that's set. And then next year, that rate may be different based on what the market's doing. So it's a very cost-effective way to get financing. So imagine you have a $20 million project, and it might take you 18 months to spend the 20 million. So what you would do is do, say, 10 or 15 million for 1 year. And the second year, do the full 20. So you're only paying interest on the
What you
15
need.
million for the portion that as you're sort of spending the money.
Right.
So it's widely held practice across the country, very normal, and cost effective.
And you don't have to
Good
start making
questions.
a principal payment either.
Yes.
Until the third year.
No, well, either after the third year, or you go to bonding.
Thank you.
Well,
Good,
I'm good.
all right. So we're gonna separate, it sounds like 2025-47.
Yeah, I'm happy with it.
Well, Tracy said that she was against it.
I can't.
So we're gonna go 2025-41 through 2025-46. And then 2025-48 through 2025-65. Motion to approve.
Second.
Allison, may I please have a roll call?
Member Paul? Yes. Natalie?
Yes.
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Bear?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. 2025-47, do I have a motion to approve?
I'd like to motion it. I'm the chair of finance.
I'll second it, please.
Allison, please have a roll call.
Member Paul?
No.
Natalie?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Yes.
Bear?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Department reports, December 2024.
What do you want to do the rest of them?
I've done all the rest of those. Department reports, December 2024. Motion to accept the reports as submitted with a thank you. Motion with a thank you.
Second with the thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. We are at the good of the borough portion of this meeting. Please stand and identify yourself by clearly stating your name and address for the record. Okay, Betsy's going to start us off. Please observe a time limit of 3 minutes.
Take me 30 seconds.
All right.
I would like to thank Chris York for his help with the Harding Bird Sanctuary. Because of his efforts, we secured a $1,500 grant to help us get started at the Harding Bird Sanctuary. So thank you very much.
Sir.
Twice in one meeting, Chris Rodriguez, 134 Button Grove Drive. Just want to congratulate Councilwoman Cole, Councilwoman Koch for re-election. I wish I was here during the reorganization. I was not able to make it, so I just wanted to say that personally. I know I reached out to you guys before, but congratulations. Well done.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Chris.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Go to the borough? No? Allison?
I have Mrs. Blazer.
Oh, okay. Hi, Ruth.
Good evening.
Hold on a sec, Ruth, because I heard you, but not on the owl. Give me 1 sec.
Yeah.
Where's everybody going?
Hold on, Ruth. We're trying to fix the audio here.
Kelly was on.
I thought it was your phone.
Check.
Mrs. Blazer. Ruth, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Go ahead.
Ruth, we're ready for you.
Okay. Last meeting, I could not get in at the end of the meeting. For some reason, my phone was not cooperating, and I have a couple short questions on stuff that came up last meeting. One was the appointment of 21 Fairhaven Road Advisory Committee members. I don't recall there being a shout out for volunteers. And
So there was, but it wasn't at the end of this past year. It was closer to when we acquired the property.
Uh-huh.
And I don't believe any of those spots opened up from the original appointment, correct? Yeah, so it was a reappointment of everyone that was originally placed on the committee.
Were it just volunteers or people who were somehow specifically qualified for the position?
Well, we did an interview process, and that specific committee had second interviews as well. And it was, based on geographic, residence, it was based on qualification, it was based on a lot of different things, yeah.
I would have liked to have done it, being that I've been in real estate for decades. Okay, on to my next one. You approved a contract with Monmouth County SPCA for animal control services. Does that include them picking up deer?
That's a different contract, I believe.
It's not.
None of our deer die.
Ruthie says it's a different.
They just got a roast in. Brian with
Ruth, did you hear that was a no? Does not include it.
I believe we contract a different gentleman
Yeah.
to pick the deer up. Is that still accurate?
Yes.
Yes.
And there is a delay.
Pardon me?
sometimes there's a delay, you have to wait sometimes you have to wait a little while before they come out, in case you notice something and that's why you're bringing it up, I don't know.
No, I was just wondering if it was. Okay, next one. We appointed a recycling coordinator for 2025, Adam Hubany. What does a recycling coordinator do?
I'll let Chris take this one.
Alright, so recycling coordinator is the one that submits all our reports to the state for our funding. And we pay him a small portion, he's certification to do it. He's been with the borough now, how many years, Allison? Been a long time.
Don't we have a grant that covers this?
Yes, and his portion is, well, it's not covered, but he's the one that attains all of our grants.
Okay,
And
and then we have regarding the equipment that we can acquire from the state or whatever, the unused equipment, and I'm kind of wondering why we would need millimeter rifles and basically war paraphernalia.
Just the way the program is, the orders is written, because that's what's required in the program, doesn't mean that we're getting those, doesn't mean that we're applying for them. Any vehicle we want to get from has to go for the governing body, but we have gotten some radios from them, we got some different equipment like cots and a vehicle, but we never got anything like that from them. And generally, we wait, because we're not going to get some that cheap like that.
And Chief, just to double down, any equipment that we get to include firearms is strictly governed by DOJ, DOC,
Yeah.
Chief of Police Association. We're not buying stuff that's gonna be used
It's just
overseas.
the way they require the ordinance to read,
Yeah,
resolution to read, so that's kind of a blanket thing that we.
100%. But we're not buying equipment used in
Yeah,
Afghanistan.
it's all for.
Okay, next. On the affordable housing, whereas the demand for market rate housing is a reasonable basis for determining whether and to what extent a realistic opportunity for the creation of affordable housing may exist, and the issuance of certificates of occupancy for new residential units is a reliable indicator of such demand. Is that just absolutely brandy new residential units or ground up renovations?
It's realistic development, but it's kind of two
No, it would have to
categories.
be, it would have to be new development.
Yep, 92.
Yes,
Brand new
It wouldn't be
Yeah.
part of a
It's
conversion.
not a renovation.
But if you.
It'd be ground up.
Ground up.
Okay, and my last item is tonight, I agree totally with Tracy Cole's reasoning on this, appointing students to committees. No, absolutely
Thank
not.
you, Ruth.
Okay, bye.
Anyone else? Allison,
No, sir.
sure.
Alan Ferguson, is the borough implementing municipal management software? I know the SDL program was talked about.
Don't even bring up SDL. Don't even.
Please.
Don't even,
Yes
don't
or
even,
no?
I don't, no, I've been in contact with them, and I have to send them another email tomorrow. For some reason, they're having a real difficult time determining, because of their shared construction department, determining that Rumsfeld and Fairhaven are two separate towns, how to separate that. After about 4 months of them trying to figure out how to do it, now they're having a real hard time, determining how to upload our forms. I don't know how they do with a large municipality, because they're having a real hard time with a smaller one. So I'm not, we've yet to pay SDL, we're not gonna pay SDL until the product actually works and they can show that it works. Right now, I'm not necessarily impressed with their product until they turn things around. I'm not impressed with the progress of this.
Okay, so they're trying to implement you guys.
Can I roll on that one? Is there consideration going off of SDL and going towards Civic Plus?
Well, I think at some point, if they cannot get this project done in the next 2 months, I think we're gonna have to go back and end this contract and move on. Again, we have not paid them. And they put a lot of hours into it, especially converting all our block and lots over to their system, and that was the hardest thing. They couldn't figure out how to separate Rumson and Fairhaven, and that's a discussion, a longer, it's 10 o'clock, so I think we went in 2 hours for this. But all I can say is for a company that's been in business as long as they have, And I do understand they have been bought out by a new owner. I don't understand why there's so many issues with them, so I'm not impressed.
Been the technical implementation, been dodgy.
Okay.
Don't,
Thank
Dodgy,
you.
yeah,
I know you
you'll
guys
appreciate that.
speak the same language.
Yeah, but to answer Mike, yes, at some point, we may have to actually go down that route.
Such a shame.
Anyone else? Allison?
Solo has his hand up.
I make a motion to close for the good of the borough.
We're gonna move to executive session.
Second.
At 10:05 PM. The motion?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you.
We have a 2-minute break.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second? All, everyone in favor?
Aye.
Beautiful. Good night, everyone.
Favorite part.